Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenet Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District here in Lakewood, Colorado. And joining me from a studio on the road of enchantment, my friend and partner. You know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Todd, how you doing, my friend? Oh my God, it's almost springtime.
It is springtime because as we're releasing this episode, we've passed the mark on the calendar and it is officially spring. We're closing the door on March and cruising into April.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. Get to talk to a new artist and it'll be a little different. So I'm really excited about that.
I have thoroughly enjoyed talking photography and with photographers all of the month of March, but I'm really excited to get back into our regular rhythm of having a different artist working in a different medium each week. So super excited to talk with our guest this week. Before we get into it, thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenet Podcast, our Tenet Podcast Facebook page, and of course, our website, tenetpodcast.com. And I want to remind you, too, that if you live in the United States, there's still time to enter the Gilpin County Arts Association 76th Annual Juried Art Show. It's the longest continuous running juried show in Colorado and the Midwest. You just got to go to cafecallforentry.org and search Gilpin County Arts Association. And there you can find all the rules and information. It's open to 2D, 3D, mixed media, and photography. You can also find out more info by going to gilpinarts.org. And I have a link for the call for entry on our Tenet Facebook page. The entry deadline is April 15th, tax day. You going to file your taxes this year? Or are they gonna...
This year I will, for sure.
Okay.
Maybe not next year.
You're not going to just hide out and wait for the IRS come knocking on your door?
I'm trying to find my little getaway before I not file taxes. But
well, now you have your bunker. Is there a secret door to it?
There is a secret door to my bunker.
Okay. All right.
But yes, I am paying my taxes this year, just in case the IRS is listening.
Me too, because my wife has been on my behind for the last month and a half to get my act together. So I think I have it all, and hopefully, in the end, we don't owe. But
and just to be clear, I don't do my own taxes. I have somebody else do my taxes.
Oh, I have somebody else do my taxes too.
Yeah,
but I drive my wife crazy in the whole process.
Yeah.
Every year. Yep. She's losing her mind. All right. Our guest this week is a fantastic multimedia artist. She's a member of Next Gallery here in the 40 West Arts District. She has an exhibition that opens Friday, March 31st, entitled Coloring Outside the Lines, a collaboration with her daughter, Daemonia. You can follow her on Instagram at Georgia's Custom Art. Welcome to the program, Georgia Padilla. Georgia, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So honored to be here. Thank you for having me today.
It's nice to see your smiling face, and it's been nice to connect with you over the, I don't know, what's it been? Maybe the last 6 to 9 months. We finally got to meet in person, and
yeah, I think so. And Wes, finally getting to meet you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This is really a wonderful opportunity to sit down with you.
Yes.
Let's start off by talking about where you're originally from. You grew up here in Colorado?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Colorado Springs, and about the time I was 10, my mom got with my stepdad and we moved to Manitou Springs. So kind of back and forth in that area until adulthood. And then I moved further north into Douglas County.
Right on. So what brought you further north? Job or school or both?
Well, a little bit of the job and then a little bit of a personal. So I have a little bit of a mental illness, and one of them is PTSD. And in order to try to help my PTSD get a little bit better, I've had some kind of traumatic life experiences that happened in the Springs. And so to work on my mental health, I decided that it wasn't really healthy for me to stay living down there, even though all of my family is from there. Without going too far away from my support, I felt like kind of in the middle was the best way. So I can still go and see my family, but I'm out of the zone that would trigger my PTSD.
That makes sense. Were you always involved with art, even as a child?
Yes, so I'm that cliche artist that it happened since childhood. I was actually born with a heart disease. It's called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome, or WPW for short. And what it is it's an extra electrical pathway in your heart. So like if this is your heart, so I'm showing my fist here, everybody naturally has an electrical pathway that runs through their heart. So whenever you're doing something that makes your heart rate increase, exercising, being scared, even simple things like walking, your heart will go through that pathway and it helps get blood through your body faster and oxygenate your blood. Well, what happens is with WPW, I have two. So one that goes a separate way, and you're not supposed to have that. So it causes electrical disturbances in my heart. And since it's in the center of the heart, it's not operatable unless you do an ablation, which is where they insert like a catheter in through your veins and they follow the veins back into your heart. And then they have to create like scar tissue wall to prevent a barrier from going in there. Because of that, I wasn't allowed to really do anything that made my heart rate increase. It's not really fun being a kid and going to the playground and being told you're not allowed to do anything, because as soon as you do, the school's got to call the ambulance to come and get you. And so I had a lot of episodes, is what we called them, where I would go into severe tachycardia and I would have to go to the hospital. When we moved to Manitou, I had this fantastic art teacher. Her name's Laura McCracken, and she's also a member at Next Gallery now. She would invite me to go to her art room. Oh, you don't have to stay out there and watch all the kids have fun. You can just come to the art room and do art with me during recess. And so that's basically where my love for art started being fostered. And she would introduce me to all different fun things and I could escape away. And from there, it just kind of progressed to being my natural coping mechanism. And I did have 2 of the ablation heart surgeries to try to fix it. But after the second one, my body would kind of go into a panic, like, oh, your heart rate's not supposed to be going up. So I developed a severe anxiety and panic disorder from that because my body would just freak out. So in order to try to keep myself calm and keep my heart rate down, I just took artwork as kind of that coping mechanism to try to keep myself grounded. And it's just been the thing I go to anytime something happens to me. So that's kind of where that love has been fostered from.
Wow, that is incredibly intense. I've never heard of this, and it's got to be rare, yeah, this condition, or is it a common thing?
I don't want to say it's super rare, but it's not super common either. There's kind of a middle ground. What was rare about mine is I had such a severe case of it, because there are some people who go through life and it doesn't really bother them as much. They just learn how to manage their heart rate, kind of like deep divers do, where you have to like learn completely how to control your body. What was rare in my case is I was really young and I had such an extreme case that the cardiologist that I was seeing at the time felt like he was completely dumbfounded at how severe my case was. And so I was constantly going to the hospital all the time. Like I said, the school was always calling the paramedics. So I knew all the paramedics by first name. And, the hospital bills were racking up. And in 5th grade, at the school I went to, we had a camp. So 5th graders, 8th graders, and 12th graders would go on these camping trips. And I had a 504 plan for healthcare because of this. I wasn't really able to do anything because we're high up in the mountains, there's less oxygen. So it's harder for me to breathe, harder for my body to work. my heart rate was naturally faster. So my resting heart rate is usually between 120 and 130, which for most people is like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to die. But like, that's just what the resting rate was. And when I was a kid, you could actually see my heart beating through my chest because it would beat so fast. I ended up having a heart attack at fifth grade camp. We were on our way home, and that prolonged period of being in high altitude, it just happened. And, my heart rate was like at 230 or 235 or something. And they had to get the ambulance to come and get me. And, the paramedics were like, oh my gosh, look at this EKG. We're going to have to quiz our boss and ask, how old do you think this person is? And, nobody could believe an 11-year-old was having that type of heart rate. So that's what was severe about my case. And because it was so bad and it was causing daily disturbances in my life, they had to hire a specialty electrical cardiologist who specifically dealt with my type of heart disease and was in the cutting edge of the ablation surgeries. So he came all the way from London to do my surgeries.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a crazy story.
It is.
That's
it's kind of
amazing.
interesting growing up, even, it happened in fifth grade, but the kids that I went to school with, even in high school, they'd be like, remember when you almost died? So it's just kind of like, for me, I forget. It's so crazy because I'm just so used to I guess I grew up in the crazy. It doesn't sound that crazy to me, but when I try to think about it in somebody else's shoes, it's like, yeah, that's not normal to think that that's not crazy.
Are you still afflicted with this even today?
I am. My second ablation actually worked and it did well up until I got pregnant with my daughter. And then because I gained so much weight so quickly, my heart actually grew a little bit. And so I started having problems with my heart again after I had her. Because of the type of heart disease this is, the normal like digoxin and different types of heart medication doesn't quite work for my issue. There's no type of medication that is specifically for the electrical workings of the heart. So, I've had to wear heart monitors quite a bit. I had to wear one throughout my pregnancy. And then actually, that first year I was at Next, there was a period of time I had to wear a heart monitor and things. So it's just kind of like you ebb and flow. And, my anxiety has gotten a little bit worse. So it's constantly trying to do mindfulness techniques and trying to, get my heart rate lower and taking anxiety medication just to try to keep myself at a stable point. And then also recognizing when is my body in danger and when do I need to take that next step. So it's always kind of a balancing act.
So talk about the whole mindfulness techniques that you do to cope with this anxiety, because just so you know, when I was going through my master's, totally unrelated to what you're going through, so I'm not trying to compare, but I had some anxiety attacks and would just talk myself down. So I was just kind of curious what kind of tools you use currently, because obviously your anxiety is probably way more elevated than mine, but I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, I kind of have a big toolbox here. So some of the tools that I use are actually from DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy. I do things called mindfulness breathing. So it took me a while to be able to do it without like a visual support. But I actually, in my purse, I carry something that I make that's called breathing beads. And it's a group of 10 beads that are strung on a ribbon. And I have like charms that mean something to me. And then with each breath, you string the bead through. So when you're taking a breath, you bring it in 1, 2, 3. And so each bead is the next step of the breath. Some people call it 4 square breathing, where it's like inhale for 10 seconds, exhale for 10 seconds, wait for 10 seconds, and then you start again. And it's kind of like a repetitive process. So that's like one main thing I do to get myself grounded, realize, okay, I can feel my heart rate is like going way up. I need to get myself calm back down. So I usually start with that. And then if that's still not working, I do something called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's like, it's kind of like with your senses, but okay, what are 5 things I can see? And then you focus on where you're at, picking out those 5 things. Okay, what are 4 things I'm hearing? Then you call out the 4 things that you're hearing. What are 3 things I can feel right now? So like right now I'm wearing kind of like this fuzzy shirt. So I would actually feel that, or feel the couch, or, different things like that. And you go through the process all the way from 5 to 1. And if that's still not enough, you can even change it up to where you do 5 to 1 on hearing, 5 to 1 on seeing, and each one you're looking at different things each time. And then there's also like different sensory inputs that you can do. So I used to carry around like aroma diffusers, like you can put them on like necklaces, keychains, all that kind of stuff. So you're helping with your senses. So I know you were drinking tea this morning. So one thing is like trying to be mindful and present in that moment while you're drinking the tea. So, grabbing the cup, and when you go to take a drink, feel the somatic feelings. So when it's going down your throat, try to describe what it feels like as you take that drink. Does it make your body feel warm? Just different things like that, because then mentally you're focusing on something else. So your brain is not able to continue to have that panic state because you're focusing on something else. So it helps bring you down from that initial trigger. And your body can't, as much as, a lot of people say, oh, well, I can't calm down. Over time, no matter how panicked you are, your body will naturally calm itself down anyway, because you can't stay in that state for a prolonged period of time. So just giving yourself some form of distraction causes your brain to start calming down. And then after you do a couple of these exercises, you'll notice, wow, okay, I'm feeling much better. But I mean, I could talk about this all day for sure. My first show was about mental illness, and I kind of talked about all these different things. So I can definitely send you a lot of stuff if you want them.
No, I find that stuff very interesting. How you can kind of take your mind and change your physiological response to whatever you're going through. And, they do it in martial arts all the time. And that's how I did, like when I was having my anxiety, because I felt like I couldn't breathe. So then what I would do is I would go outside and I would kind of talk myself down, take deep breaths through the nose, exhale through the mouth, kind of doing that same thing, holding my breath for 10, it's very similar to what you're doing. I just didn't have the training. I love the bead idea, the whole running the beads. I think because that's sensory, you can feel the beads plus your breathing. I mean, that's a great technique. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some because I have a whole bunch of them. So
yeah, that would be great.
That is so interesting. So do you experience anxiety every day, or is it just kind of a random thing and it might happen like 3 times a week or something like that?
So I have it every day. Some days are worse than other days. It kind of just depends on the situation. I'm definitely very open about it. It's one thing that I feel like is very important to kind of end that stigma around mental illness, is if everybody's coming out and talking about it, then it's easier to talk about it. So you'll see it a lot with, like, sometimes I will lash out and then realize, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, it's not you. I'm just, I'm freaking out right now and I'm overwhelmed because of all these things that are going on with me, and I'm anxious and I just snapped at you. And so it's kind of like I have to take that minute to realize, okay, I'm in my head right now and I totally did not mean to take it out on you. And so that happens to me a lot. I'm a perfectionist by nature. So like you'll see anxiety with, like, I have to-do lists everywhere. I hold myself to a timeline. I have a planner and I'm constantly looking at the dates. Even with me being a member at Next, I'm constantly looking at our show calendars, who's showing, because I just have anxiety about everything. And it all kind of correlates into one big snowball of issues. Like, I'm just constantly, like, I need to know what's happening, what's expected of me, when I'm going to do something, how I'm going to do it. So like, I am always like over prepared for things. So that's kind of how you see it manifest for me.
Gosh, wow. That's intense.
Yeah.
Well, when you grow up with it, over time, you just kind of have to radically accept that this is what it is. And there's tons of books that are like, oh, you can overcome these things. But sometimes you have to recognize that you have a chemical imbalance and that you just have to put in the work to do it, but it might not fully go away. So how can you cope to be able to live everyday life with these issues? It's kind of my thought process, at least.
I don't want to get too personal, but can you talk about is your PTSD connected to your heart condition, or was it actually like physical trauma that you and you don't have to talk about it if you don't want?
Well, I'll be transparent. It was physical trauma. So I actually have what's called CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. So it's harder to treat than regular PTSD. And you get complex PTSD by having prolonged, over time, continuous trauma. So some of mine happens to be like childhood trauma and things I grew up with. And then the other part was a sexual assault that I experienced in high school. So with that retaliation and, the big issues that came along with the school, you add all of that and years of dealing with it. And it created kind of an explosional mess there.
Yeah, what's interesting is, when we hear the word PTSD, we're so used to thinking of as a combat scenario. Like you've been to combat, or you're in a shootout as a police officer, or you're, something very traumatic like that. And I don't think people think about sexual assault as a PTSD thing. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is my thing, but it just seems like to realize that these sexual traumas can produce PTSD, I think is important for people to realize. Am I wrong in that, or do you think society doesn't make that connection between sexual assault and PTSD?
I think that it didn't for a long time, with the whole Me Too movement and different light being shown on sexual assault and what's going on with that. I think some people are starting to recognize that there is a direct correlation with that. There's still a long way to go within that area. And, because a lot of people don't like talking about it, like even in my own instance, even when I was trying to process it and would talk to other people about it, they would get so upset about me talking about what happened to me that I learned to just shove it down. No, people don't want to hear about this. This is too much for them. And so I felt like it was my burden to have to carry. And as I started getting treatment and working on it over time, I realized that, I have to talk about it. And if people don't like hearing about it, that's part of the problem, is because we always want to shove these problems aside. And that's basically why I like to do shows that are like this, is because you have to start that conversation somewhere. And leaning into the uncomfortable, these are often subjects people don't want to talk about. They don't want to hear about it. And so as much as it is very difficult to put yourself in that vulnerable place, my voice as an artist is to, if they don't want to verbally hear me talk about this, then I'm going to show you. So that's kind of why I do it that way. That's my voice. And I have been very open about my mental illness and what happened to me. And I've been very willing to share it, even when people don't want to hear it. So I think it's important for me to just carry on doing that. And over time, hopefully that stigma will lessen and lessen over time, the more people are becoming comfortable to also join that vulnerability place.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but
no,
I think
it's okay.
I think it's important to have these discussions and the fact that we have you here and you're willing to share that, I do appreciate that. So,
of course. Thank you.
And I love that you use your art to help facilitate these conversations. I mean, that's the power of art, right? If you can't actually have the actual conversation, you can present it in another way and bring light to that particular issue. And especially something that might be incredibly uncomfortable, like you said, or complex for people to wrap their heads around, but starting that conversation with the art that you make. And that's what really resonates with me as far as the work that I've seen from you. So, and I commend you for, some people, I could imagine this would be so debilitating that it would just stop them in their tracks. But here you are, you continue to make things, to create art and get these issues and these ideas and things that you want to talk about to the forefront in front of people.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I was in that place where it was so debilitating that, I've had issues with suicidal ideation, and it brought up those same issues again for me. And honestly, art has saved my life, not just like in the aspect of, you know, I hear this all the time about like how art is just your life, but it really, without my art, I probably would have succeeded in my attempts and different things, but it gave me a way to outlet, to get the emotions out that people didn't want to hear about. And over time, working on that art and putting it out there, in the beginning, I actually didn't want to share my art with people. Trying to become a professional artist is more recent for me within the past 5 years. Before that, it was literally like a very personal, vulnerable, I'm making this art for me to survive, for me to get out all of this trauma and sadness and hurt that was trapped inside of me and feeling so unworthy and like I shouldn't be here. It gave me a way to get it out because nobody wanted to hear about how I felt or what was happening to me, and it would upset them. So, with me being able to get it out in some way, helped me to kind of clear my mind or to help me think more objectively than emotionally. And over time, I started sharing my art, trying to be vulnerable with other people. And people would say, oh, you should try to get in a gallery. That's so good. And, for the longest time, I was very apprehensive about that because this is such a personal and intimate part of my journey that I share my art. Because when I'm doing art, it's like a conduit. Like I'm focusing those energies of what I'm thinking through my hands to get it on paper. And so I feel like it is a very visual representation of what struggles I'm dealing with. I really didn't want to do that. And then I had some great friends that were like, you need to do this. Just try it. Just try it. And after some contemplation, I entered an open call show in the Springs with 3 pieces. And when I walked out of there, I'm criticizing myself and, oh, nobody's going to like my art. It looks like nothing else in this show. Like I probably shouldn't have even got into this show. And I ended up winning Best in Show. And so then that's when my mindset started changing where, okay, maybe I can do this. How can I do this? And then I saw from my friend and fellow artist, Laura McCracken, she had posted about the Next Gallery scholarship that they were doing in 2019. And I was like, should I do this? Maybe this is what's going to get me into a gallery. Am I ready for this? And so I just sat and stared at the application for like 4 weeks, I want to say, like debating, am I good enough for this? Should I try this? Am I ready for this? Can I do this? Questioning myself a lot. And I entered, and lo and behold, I got the scholarship or one of the spots. And kind of the rest is history from that, and that's what got me started into the professional art career.
Nice.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yes, I'm grateful for that opportunity. That really set me in motion there. So forever appreciative of that.
I love too that you think about all these different instances, these different moments in your life and how things kind of come together. The universe kind of gives you these things when you need it. I love that you had this instructor in your youth, Laura McCracken, that saw the things that you're going through and gave you the opportunity to have a place to come do something, instead of just watching other kids play and have fun and do their thing or whatever. Because you couldn't do that, she gave you a space that you could come create and do something that, that you loved and enjoyed doing.
Right.
And that you continued that friendship. So
yes.
That's really fantastic as well.
Yeah, she's been a very big encouraging force in my life within my art. So I don't think I would be where I am artistically without having her encouragement and her pushing me to try something new. Like I said, I was a little bit too meek and scared and kept thinking to myself, oh, my art's never going to be good enough to be in a gallery. And she kept saying, you just need to try. And I really needed that push to get out of my head's critic.
Yeah.
Did you get encouragement from other friends and family members when it came to your artwork?
So my mom's been a really big support. When we used to be in, grade school and everything, they used to have this thing where you could order your kids' artwork as like mouse pads and coffee cups and different things. And my mom would buy them and then be like, "Oh, you're going to be a famous artist one day." And I'd always be like, "Yeah, right. You're just my mom. You have to say that. But as I've kind of started progressing in my art career, she's been like, "Haven't I always told you?" So she's been a big support factor in that. And now that I also started doing craft shows, she's been right there trying to be there to help with all of that. So that's been a great support. My stepdad only just recently kind of got on board because he was always like, "Art's not a real job. How are you going to take care of yourself?" And now that he sees that I'm starting to make progress, he's kind of changing his tune a little bit. And then my sister has really been, always wanting artwork from me and different things. So in that area, I've had kind of a small support system that has been consistent, which has been really nice. Because I know not a lot of artists do have that.
Yeah, that's important. And that can make or break, an art career on that path. If you're not getting that kind of support from people that you respect and are part of your life, I think that kind of kills it for some people. So I'm so happy that you have that support system in place, and the work speaks for itself. So, I mean, you're definitely doing what you're supposed to be doing. I love your stuff.
Oh, thank you. I try to do a lot of different things. So
yeah, you have a lot of irons in the fire. You touched on how getting that scholarship through Next, how important that was, but how important has that been to be part of that collective, that community of artists for you?
It's been really important. So that first year that I got the scholarship, before that, I thought my art was at a pretty good level, and when I got into the collective and I'm looking, because I was predominantly an acrylic artist when I came to Next, and I'm looking at these other acrylic artists like Blake Chamness, and I'm like, oh, I think I got some work to do. Like, I'm not as good as I thought I was. Really gave me a push that, like, okay, this is the level of the artists that are around me, and this is what their shows look like. So how can I strive to grow as an artist and learn new things and get my artwork up to their level? Having kind of that environment where they're pushing each other, they're always wanting to do something new and wanting to have just different type of shows that show that growth was really enlightening for me, because other than Laura, I had no art friends. And so I never really got to have art discussions. I'm not, I'm self-taught mainly. So, there was a lot of things I didn't know. Now having a group of friends that could teach me new things or give me different ways to look at things or help me learn how to create a show. Because before I would just do one piece because that's how I was feeling for the day and that's it. Now I'm having to come up with a whole show concept and what does that look like, and how what do I want to say within that, and how do I make a cohesive show. So learning all of those things without having to go to school has been challenging, but it's been inspiring and helpful at the same time, because instead of being told by a professor who might not like my work, "Oh, you need to do this and this, and you're not," I hear all these horror stories about what it was like to be in art school, and that it didn't help with this part, and it didn't help with this part, and it made them question their work. I'm getting more of a specific teaching kind of about what it means to be a professional artist, but also what I need to do to get better, because I don't need to conform to what other artists are doing. And so I really have enjoyed being able to get artist friends that can have that discussion with me and push me further.
What else do you love about being part of that whole collective?
Well, the one thing with Next is that it's very family oriented. So, our new director, Tara, she's taken over for Josh. And before she even became the director, she invited all the membership. And we have a large collective. Full membership, we're 28 members plus mentored members. So we have a pretty large collective. And she invites the entire membership to come to her house and have a barbecue and just a fun hangout together. So it's not just like we're there during the shows, we're showing up for each other. We're socializing outside of being in the gallery and creating authentic friendships within there. And, I've heard about other galleries where it's like, oh, they fight all the time, or, different things like that. And it's like, you get very connected to this group of people because they're so passionate, but because they also want to be your friend. It's not just like, oh, you're just another artist here. It's like, we genuinely want you. So I think that has been a great thing for my mental health as well, of feeling like you belong or feeling connected has been a great thing. And so I really enjoyed that. And then I don't really get out very much, also with my anxiety. During COVID, I was actually happy we didn't get to go anywhere, or I was just like, yes, okay, I'm home. Nobody's going to ask me to come over. Nobody's going to like last minute, like, hey, I'm at your house. Like, oh man, throw me into a panic attack there. So the thing with being at Next is that it forces me to have connection and go outside of my house, because if it wasn't for that, I would just be at my house all the time, me and my daughter and my husband all the time, and we would never be doing anything else. So that's one thing too, is that it pushes me to get out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I loved how you explained and described it as a family environment, because family isn't necessarily always blood related. You find
Right.
your people, and those people a lot of times become just as important as anybody else in your lives, right?
Right. Exactly.
So talk about all the different mediums that you work in and what you do as an artist.
Okay, so I guess I would say visually my artwork is kind of illustrative. And so I do some acrylics. I do ballpoint pen scribbles, which is like one of my favorite things to do and most requested for portraits. So it's just taking like a ballpoint pen and I literally just scribble over and over and over until it gets the contrast and value. So there's never any hard lines. I think that's actually one of the images on the back of my business card is a picture of one of those pieces. And then one of the mediums that the gallery patrons like the most is my relief work, which is what I do with the aluminum foil. And then let's see here, what else? Oh, I do watercolor occasionally. I'm a very different type of watercolor artist. I don't really like the very loosey-goosey, go with the flow, let it do what it wants to do, because I'm a control freak and a perfectionist and I want it to do what I want it to do. So when I do watercolor, it's very bold. It doesn't really look like watercolor. But I don't like the gouache as much, because it's so similar to acrylic. Like I like the watercolor, but I like it when it's the bold, controlled way that I do. I don't know if that makes any sense, but so, I have a couple pieces that I do with that. I sometimes do acrylic with palette knife. That's kind of been a newer thing that I've been doing, because that one I do have to relinquish control. So that's a good exercise for me. And then I do something that I call as my doodles, and I'm trying to elevate that higher, which are my zentangles. So it is a form of mindful doodling, and there are some art therapists that actually use that as a therapy form. And I usually do it with watercolor, and then I zentangle over, and I've actually illustrated a book with that technique. So I think that covers most of it, or at least my fine art. When it comes to my fine crafts, I do a lot of polymer clay work.
You're all over the board, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love to see that in an artist practice. I love the diversity of what I see on your social media and then what I've experienced firsthand in the gallery. And I love this relief stuff that you do. It's really intricate and it's so unique. I'm going to pull up this piece that you just recently posted. I love this. I hadn't seen this one in person, but talk a little bit about this, the flight of the bumblebee.
Well, disclaimer, this piece just sold yesterday, so
it is
no longer there. Yes.
I literally was looking at this piece thinking, I might have to go over to Next today if they're open this afternoon and check this out in person. So it's already gone.
Yeah, I got a message yesterday that it was sold. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So this one is actually a little bit simpler than what I normally do. So it has a little bit less texture and the depth of it is a little bit less than what I normally do. So that's what was interesting to me. So for this piece, the top layer is actually aluminum foil. So I usually buy just the stuff from the dollar store because I'm all about saving money. But it is very delicate. It does rip very easily. So usually when I'm doing these pieces, there is a lot of incessant cursing because once it rips, you got to start all over. So that part can be very frustrating. But basically, when I'm doing these techniques, you have to create tons of texture or else everything blends together and you can't see anything. It just looks like a shiny blob of metal. So you have to look at every element and everything that is next to it. So does this match this? Is this too closely of a design to this? Is this too close of a design to this? So like for the wings, is it matching too closely to the honeycombs? Are the honeycombs spaced enough to where the ink is going to go deep enough and show that depth? Okay, we don't want the honeycombs all to be exactly the same because we want to have interest. So each size honeycomb is going to have a different texture. So how can I make different textures that are similar enough to where you can still identify what everything is? For these pieces, you almost have to work backwards. You have to envision what the piece is going to look like before you even start. So I use a mat board as the base, and then I draw out what I'm going to want on that mat board. And then from there, I have to critically think, okay, to get the value and the depths, whatever is going to be dark has to be deeper into the piece. And whatever is going to be the lightest has to be closer to the top of the piece. So it's almost like building a foundation in construction. Like you have to know your game plan before you even start. So I've done like pieces like this. The biggest piece I've done was 24 by 36, and it was a portrait. So I've done portraits, landscapes, repeating images, and then obviously that one. Yeah, so that's one of them. That is over at Mint and Sheriff right now.
The intricacy of it just blows my mind. Every time I walk in the gallery, because for those that don't know, Next has a section that's just the community gallery. And, members can display artwork that they're working on or have or what have you. And I almost always see a piece of yours in there. I always go check it out because I never know what I'm going to see. And I'm always hoping that I'm going to see a new relief piece from you. I just love this work.
Yeah. So actually relief was what got you talking to me in the first place. Cause I think what was up was the baby.
Oh yeah.
And that was that day I was actually came to see the show and I was rushing to leave and you stopped me and I was kind of flabbergasted or shocked, like, oh, he deals with all these like big time artists and he's coming and stopping me. And so I almost felt like I didn't even know what to say at first. So there's actually a video there that shows you from the beginning to the end of how I do the relief. So so that's the baby one that you were talking about.
That crazy.
One was absolutely amazing. Did you sell this piece?
I did not. I still have that at home here.
Okay.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm just blown. I was watching the video while you guys were talking, and it's just amazing how you do this. How did you come up with this? I mean, is other people doing this with tinfoil? And then how did you come up with it?
So I actually learned this in high school. My high school art teacher learned this from a guy named Michael Kellum. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's a pretty big name. He's taught quite a few different classes and workshops, and he's a pretty talented artist himself, and he taught this to a group of school teachers. And we did this in school. It was very basic. It was like a 4x4 little square that we did as an assignment. And then when I got into the gallery and I noticed there's so many people doing acrylic or oil. And so I was trying to look at, okay, what are things that I know how to do that is not represented in the gallery, that I can set myself apart and do something different. And so I saw that nobody's doing this relief, and I decided that I was going to elevate my relief work into something that was more of a higher art quality. Because when you do see this type of technique, it's mainly like somebody has a leaf under there or a string, and it's very rudimentary, kind of abstract, just shapes everywhere, cubism-ish kind of look. And so when I was trying to find my niche within Next, I was like, okay, how can I push myself to make this something that I can be known for and is at a higher level? So I started really experimenting and pushing myself to do way more complex compositional work that would elevate this type of medium. And so from going from a freshman in high school to this, there's been a huge growth, but it's also been a massive learning curve to learn how to do this so detailed.
Yeah, because it looks really complex. So when you first saw this, Todd, what did you think?
It was so unique, which is what I'm always, like when we go out to galleries together, that's what we always resonates, right? The uniqueness of a particular piece. I was just blown away by the intricacy of it and, the level of it. I've seen other work like this, but nothing on this level. And I just fell in love with it. And like I said, every time I go into Next, I'm always looking to see if Georgia has a piece, a relief piece up there in the community gallery. I really love it. Had that B piece not sold, I probably would have gone over there and bought it today. Seriously.
I like it a lot. I think that B piece is really, really cool. Yeah. And
thank you so much.
Yeah. I love the textures in it. So when you finish one of these, do you frame it and put it in glass to protect it? Because it's still going to be fragile, right?
Yes. And also because of inking it, that ink will get everywhere. So I always,
because it's not drying to anything, so it's always staying on the surface, right?
Yeah, and I've been trying to experiment with different like finishing mediums to see what works, but because the type of ink it is, and because foil is slippery, really, so it doesn't ever fully dry. So painting a varnish or spraying a varnish, it does alter and change what it originally looked like when it was finished, because you're spraying something on it, you're re-wetting it, so it's moving. So I haven't found anything yet that I'm able to finish it without the glass. So I do always make sure I put these in glass, and that also helps reinforce it when I frame. And then it also keeps that mystery because you can't see the backing of it or anything. It just makes it look really nice. So I'm going to continue to experiment with different finishings for this, because I would like to do ornaments like this for our next gallery winter art market.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of comes to mind, and I don't know anything about like aluminum and how that all, but I wonder if it patinas, if you use some kind of chemical that would make it patina in a way that would be controlled and it would still be, obviously it's still on the surface, right? But it just, that's what comes to mind. This is really interesting. And the one that Todd has up there now, what's the name of this piece that we're looking at?
It's actually a quote. So love is only made more valuable by the risk of heartbreak.
Okay. This is really a beautiful piece. So talk about this one, because this is it's obviously metaphoric.
Yeah. So this piece kind of symbolizes that by nature, we're creatures that are constantly looking for love and connection in some sort of capacity. And when you are constantly in a place where your heart is broken, or you feel like you've lost this connection, with someone, whether it's a friendship or romantic relationship, you know, in any of those capacities, there is this innate feeling over time where I have found that people try to block that off. They don't want to love again, or they want to protect themselves from having heartbreak. And so for this piece, this was actually in the Canon's open call Dark Hearts. And I wanted to really symbolize that fact that in order to have love and connection, inevitably you're going to have some sort of heartbreak. And that's what makes love more meaningful, when you have that connection and you're working through these things, because love in any capacity does not come easily. And it takes, you know, multiple people, that give and take back and forth, to actually make that relationship and that connection happen. And so this is kind of that ode to don't close yourself off just because you keep getting your heart broken. Keep trying, keep doing it, because when you find it, it's going to mean something more to you.
Right. And I see this one is 14 by 17 and a half. How long did it take you to create this, as far as, you know, the physical part of it?
Well, you'll actually be pretty surprised, because once I got my technique down, I can actually crank these out pretty fast.
Really? Wow.
So with drying time, well, if we go by days, this probably took 3 days, but actively working on it, I would say between 12 and 16 hours.
Okay. Yeah, that's really quick. I would have thought this would take you quite, you know, obviously I've never done this, so I have no idea, but it's so intricate. It's really, really beautiful. I love the design too. I think this is really a stunning piece.
Well, thank you so much. The one that was 24 by 36 was actually my first show, Courage Over Comfort. And it was a piece about depression, and it is a huge one. That one actually took me a month and a half to do that piece. So that one took the longest.
Yeah. 24 by 36. Wow, that's huge.
I love this work. And then my interaction with you, like everything that you create, there's always this deep thought. You're a deep thinker. Yeah. And it's so intelligent, the thought behind it. And I love hearing about, like, the last show that I went to, I think Reflections.
Yes.
Wasn't that what it was called? Yeah. I just love the thought behind it. And then, you know, and then having that dialogue with you. I mean, it's just so fantastic.
Because art has always come from such a deep place, you know, a lot of people have just told me, you know, you just need to go with the flow, let the art just create itself. And I mentally, I just cannot do that. Like, I have to have some reason or meaning to doing my art. So like those community gallery shows at Next, those have been very challenging for me, because they're so loosely themed, because they want everyone to participate. And so it's a very generic, loose theme. You interpret it how you want. And so I usually have to go over that theme and really think about it. I write down all the different definitions of the word, what it could be. And then I have to find a way that I'm going to connect to that word and that theme. And then I dive down the rabbit hole to figure out how am I going to create something for the show. And so that was the more challenging part for me, was sometimes the themes aren't always something I want to create art about. So how can I get it to be something I want to create art about and still mean something to me? So that thankfully that has helped push me out of my comfort zone. And like you said, with a lot of these artworks that I put in the community show, have been some of my greatest works, because I'm really put out of my comfort zone to create something new.
Sounds like you really enjoy that challenge. Once you embraced it and delved into it, you really enjoy doing it, don't you?
Yeah, a little fight there, but once you do, then once you finish the piece, that's like where it's like, oh, that was so much worth all that incessant cursing and being angry at this. And now I really love this. So it's definitely a process, that's for sure.
Have you ever done any commission pieces using this aluminum foil technique?
I did have one, and it was actually snowflakes. Yeah, I haven't gotten a lot of commissions asked for it. It's usually people just see it and are like, oh, I got to have that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of people like know what to ask for like when they're
Right.
seeing it, because it's so different. It's almost like, well, would this be cool in that form, or would
Mm-hmm.
this be cool in that form? Or, so I mean, I'm open to doing that, but I guess I'll have to wait and see what happens.
And then what do these pieces go for roughly? What are you asking for now? Because obviously after this podcast, you're going to ask for more.
The consistent factor at Next is that I need to raise my prices.
Right.
They feel like they've been way low. So they go anywhere from, if it's something very simple, like even simpler than the B, I would do probably 100. And so far I've gone all the way up to 500, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll probably will go up a little bit. Also inflation. So this year I had to kind of increase some of my prices a little bit.
Sure.
But I'm a very big, and other artists are going to hate me for this, but I am a very big proponent of everybody deserves art. And not everybody, especially after COVID, can afford a $1,200 piece of artwork. As much as I've gotten a lot of grief for having such low prices, my artwork is not something that you're going to hang in a doctor's office, or, not a lot of people will hang it in their living room for, just you random visitors to be seeing. My artwork is usually pretty raw most of the time, and I like to do very emotional artwork, and a lot of the imagery does happen to be portraits. I don't know why. I try to stay away from that, but they always turn out to be people most of the time. And the people that have started collecting my artwork is because they really connect with that artwork. It has a very personal meaning to them. And sometimes people who have that deep personal connection can't afford extremely pricey artwork.
Right.
And so I try to be cognizant of that, because, I don't have a legitimate job. I am a full-time artist now, and I'm doing craft fairs and things, but my husband is the main breadwinner. And even though there's tons of artwork that I see in the galleries that I wish I could buy, it's just not in my price point. I can't afford that. And I don't want somebody to feel so connected to my artwork and then be so bummed out that they can't afford it. And so I try to take into account that people have lost their jobs, and what will reimburse my supplies, make me a small profit, but still be able to be affordable. So, as much as a bunch of artists are going to be cringing when they hear this, that is why I price my art so much lower. And it's worked for me in the past 3 years.
So I want to see Todd cry. So what did you sell the B one for?
I believe that one was actually $175.
Wow. Nice.
So that one was my first experiment of an increase in price. So yeah.
Well, I think you're still undervaluing your work, obviously, but it's really cool that you think that way, that you want people to be able to afford it. So it sounds like if somebody really connected to a piece and felt like they had to have it but couldn't afford it, you'd probably work with them some way, either making payments or whatever. So that's really cool. And you're not the first artist that feels that way and will do that. So Todd, I think you missed out.
No,
How many times have we learned this though, that
I know.
really you gotta, like, if something like feels to you and it's you gotta almost have to, like, Todd and I, and what's funny is Todd and I like the same stuff, which is really bizarre, because I wouldn't have thought, just knowing Todd, that we look at stuff, and I've passed on stuff because Todd was going to buy it and then he didn't buy it, and then I'm like, and then there's stuff that I bought before that he's like, so, that was a steal for 170. You said 175. Yeah, that's a steal, because it's a beautiful, I know it's only 8x8, but it's a really beautiful piece. I love it. I wish I could have seen it in person. So yeah.
Well, next time, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I ask about commissions because I could see, like, I definitely, next time I'm down there, I'm going to hunt you out, because it's one thing to see it on the screen, right? But it's another thing to see it in person. And because this is a relief, I know that I'm not getting the true essence of the piece. So yeah, I'm really curious. So I can't wait to next time I'm in Denver, I'll try to make an effort to go see your stuff. So yeah, beautiful,
thank you.
beautiful
Yeah,
piece. And
those
congrats on
ones
the
are
set.
so hard to photograph because they're so reflective, it's so hard to get everything. But what I love about seeing them in person is every time you look at it, you see some other different detail that you didn't see before. So it's kind of like the I Spy, and you've got to like look at it like 15 times before you really see everything. So maybe for my next show, because I'm already planning my next show, and I'm trying to do a full relief show for my next show. So
here's an interesting thing. Just because I'm seeing it on the screen, and obviously somebody took a picture of this, and it looks really cool. I think you could do prints of these and sell the prints. If you got a really nice photograph of these, even though you're not, because there's enough contrast there with the honeycombs and the darkness of it all, that this is a really kind of, I could see like an 8x8 piece framed that's a print that would just be beautiful hung up. So anyway, that's my tidbit.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, just play with it once and see what you think. What do you think, Todd?
Okay.
Don't you think these would be great?
Well, in that same vein, I was just going to ask Georgia, have you explored much with actual like printmaking? I could see you totally doing that as well, and excelling because of the other artwork that you do.
I actually have not. I've watched a lot of reels and different things of other printmakers and thought, oh, this is pretty cool. And in elementary school, we did like the whole stamp, making your own stamps and carving it out. So I know the basics of how to do it, but I have not branched out to doing it yet. I'm going to say.
You're onto something, Todd, because she's got this skill in this aluminum foil work that translates straight over to printmaking. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say yet because I'm always looking for new, different things to do. So who knows, in the future, I might start dabbling a little bit.
That would be interesting. I'll be curious to see if that is something that resonates with you and you decide to explore that. So how many exhibitions have you done since you've been part of Next?
So I've done 2, and like we said, tomorrow will be my 3rd.
Okay. So the first one was, because I saw the second one, obviously, that Reflections body of work. What was the first one?
So my first one was called Courage Over Comfort, and it was about mental illness, and it was about exposing my public and private selves, and in order to try to end the stigma around mental illness. So it's pretty far down there. It was with kind of that, if you're on my Instagram, it's kind of with that section that had the depression piece, which was the really large relief. So what I did was I created 7 pairs of artwork. And so, yeah, this one is about being in chronic pain all the time. So there's one piece that was my public self, how I present myself and how I act in public, versus my private self that was hidden behind a curtain. So viewers had to open the curtain to reveal what I'm dealing with in private.
Mm.
So like this piece that you have up now, that has my Zentangles on it. And this piece is about anxiety. So what I'm dealing with when I'm going through anxiety. So each piece was labeled public and private, and then all of the private pieces were hidden behind a curtain. And then, as much as I know a lot of artists hate when you put all these descriptions and talk about your art and different things, that they feel like the art should talk for itself. But because these pieces and this show was very much about myself, I am telling you about myself and what I want you to know about myself. I don't want you to make an inference or your own conclusion about this work. I'm telling you what I want you to know. And if you relate to me in some sort of way and relate to the piece, that's a plus. So this show, I went about it in a very different way. So yeah, this one, you can see how you have to open it. So that's my vulnerability piece. So the piece that's next to it is actually a relief piece of a girl double flipping you off. And that is my public piece, which is showing that I seem to have I don't give a F attitude about things, and that, I'm kind of just rude. But really, I'm trying to be vulnerable. I'm telling you all of these things. I'm being completely transparent, honest. And even if you don't like it, I'm still putting myself in that vulnerable place.
I love that idea. I love the whole concept. I love the fact that you hide it and people have to actually open it to see it. I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. And, and I know some artists, like you said, they want the piece to speak to that particular person that's viewing it, but I don't think there's any right or wrong. And your approach to it, I think, is totally legitimate. And I appreciate that. I mean, we had a whole conversation based around, you were curious what I thought, and you kind of gave me the premise of the show Reflections and all the different pieces. And I really enjoyed having that conversation with you. So yeah, I don't think there's any right or wrong. And I want to back it up because you were talking a little bit previous about, you said basically that I'm a full-time artist and that's not a legitimate job, but that is a legitimate job. And it is important what you do. And you are opening eyes, and don't ever think otherwise. Okay. Because
okay.
I believe in you and I believe in the work. And that's why I sought you out that day when I was at the gallery. I was like, I got to go introduce myself and make a connection with Georgia, because I've been following you on social media. I'd seen a handful of your pieces in person, and I just wanted to meet you and have that experience. So yeah, don't ever think that what you do is not important or not legitimate, because it totally is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm still working on that accepting part,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's from a lifetime of what you've been through, right? So, when people, even when let's say your stepdad wasn't all in, and that's the role of a stepdad, wants to make sure, or a father wants to make sure you're being prudent, and I want you to have a job that can make money, but when you hear that and constantly, it gets in your psyche, and to break that idea that this is what I am and I'm going to pursue it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's just like you said, it's just kind of coming to acceptance of that. The other thing I want to address too is I like the idea that you're giving some context to your art, because especially in that kind of show, you need context, because once again, you're trying to explain what you're going through. But sometimes, especially it's like in some abstract stuff, if somebody would give you a little bit of context, it can change the whole. I mean, it's great to go up and say, what do I feel? What emotions are being invoked from me? But there's another thing to say, what is this about? Why is this important? And if they give you a little bit of context, then you can go, oh, now I see it. Now I get why this is important work, and why I should really spend some more time with it. So I think giving context is always good. And and then if you don't want to give context, then let the viewer, then don't let the viewer pick what they want, because they'll come away with something. It's a collaboration between the viewer and the artist. So yeah.
Right.
The one piece that I really like, Todd, was it had a red background with the woman screaming.
Oh yeah. That one actually sold even before the show, because I had posted it on my social media, and she was like, I will buy that right now if you don't sell it in your show. I was like, well, as long as you let me put it in the show, I will let you buy it now, but it has to be in the show, and then I'll mail it to you, because she's out of state.
Oh wow. So talk about that piece a little bit.
So this is my ballpoint pen scribbles. This one is, so the public and private. So this is my public showing that I'm angry and lashing out all the time. But really what I was dealing with in private is my PTSD. Mm-hmm. And so my toxic trait is that when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm dealing with a lot of things. So I made this piece when I was still in the core of my daughter getting her diagnoses, and we were having appointments nonstop. I felt like we lived at the doctor, and then I was dealing with my health issues. So I have permanent damage from having my daughter, which affected my ability to work a regular job. So I was dealing with constantly going to the doctor. So the background is a wood board, and I wrote down for 2 months every single appointment, the time and where the appointment was. And then I tore the paper up, and then I dipped it in tea and coffee to age it. And then I used archival ink and did the outside. And then I glued them on, like collaged them onto this wooden board. From there, I did this piece that's up on the screen now where I scribbled her face, because that's how I'm feeling inside. Like, I just need a break. I feel like I don't have a minute to myself. I'm, with all these doctors and needing to know all these private things about what's going on in our lives, every little detail about my daughter. I have to remember everything. I have all these appointments. I have the art gallery responsibilities. At the time, I still had a job that I was working part-time. So still dealing with that, still making time for my husband, still having family time, still being a mother, dealing with my health issues at the same time. And it just felt like I was literally going to go crazy. So the smallest things, I would just snap and I'd just yell at everybody. I'd yell at my husband. I can't do this right now. Or, oh my gosh, I can't find my keys. And I'm blithering around, screaming like a crazy fool. And it wasn't anybody, I'd have to tell my husband, I'm sorry I lashed out at you. It's not your fault. I'm just overwhelmed. And so this is how, when I'm in this state and everything is going on, and I'm getting triggered because I'm taking my daughter to go see her grandma, and it's in a part of town that I absolutely hate being in. So now I'm also having this trigger, but I have to remember to get all of my daughter's sensory bags and every need that she may need while she's with her. So it's all of these crazy things that the smallest things make me go crazy. So then after I made this piece, I sandwiched it in plexiglass and then mounted it off of that board to really give you the power of what I was feeling.
Yeah, I love this piece. I love the raw emotion of it and the technique. It's really, it's well done. And that's a beautiful portrait, even though it's raw, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So I'm not surprised it's sold. This is beautiful.
Thank you so much.
It's crazy, that technique that you do. I just love it. These pieces are just so not only emotional, but just the technique and everything that goes into it, the thought, it's mesmerizing.
So this is actually the medium that I get the most commissions for, because most people ask for portraits or in-memory portraits in this style.
Wow. Okay.
How much of the work that you do is commission work?
I'd actually only say right now, well, if you're only looking at my fine art commission, I'd only say maybe 10%. If you're looking at my fine craft, that is probably, I'd want to say 50 to 60%.
Okay. Now you maintain an Etsy store.
Yes.
So talk about all the things that you do that go into that you sell. And you mentioned that you're doing craft shows as well.
Yes. So after I had my daughter and all this permanent damage and different things, and then I lost my job because I needed ADA accommodations and things, I kept trying to find another job and it just wasn't working out. So finally, I told my husband, like, if this is going to be the time where I try to be a full-time artist and actually make a living off of it, this is the time it's going to have to be. So after years and years of apprehension to doing craft fairs and Etsy, because, Etsy has all these fees and everything, I finally said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. We'll see what happens. And so I created my Etsy shop in May of last year. I started with just what people said I should create an Etsy shop with. So that is like the book character earrings, which is like a teacher favorite. That's my bestseller. I have some of my ornaments on there. I have some of my polymer clay pens. Mainly right now, it's mainly the earrings. Oh, you see the coasters and my Zentangled bookmarks. The breathing beads are on there, Wes.
Oh, there you go.
So it doesn't have all of the stuff that I normally do at the craft fair. I've been told I need to add some more stuff to that. But my pool was, if you come to the craft fair, you get things that aren't readily available to other people. So that's kind of my pool to come see me in person, because I got even cooler stuff if you come in person. So right now, like I said, the top ones, the book character earrings, those ones are like my top seller. I'm constantly selling out of those. I do take custom orders on those. So if there's like a book character that I don't have on there, you can choose the custom option. And I usually try to do that within 2 to 3 days and get it shipped out right away. And I've been a star seller since July. So that's almost the entire time I've had it. So I have all the star seller ratings for customer service, shipping, 100%. So you can shop with that guarantee in mind that you're going to get it no problem.
Oh, nice. I like your Stay Strong breathing bead. I think that's really cool.
Thanks. There's actually a ton of them on. I think I have like 50 of them right now. Because that was actually part of my show that I did with Courage Over Comfort. I was selling these breathing beads as a way to deal with anxiety. So it comes with a book that I make that has like different ways that you can do it, different breathing exercises. Oh, wow. And then they all have different color combinations, different charms that you can choose from. That's just one thing I feel like, it really helped me, and it helped me in some of my darkest times. I still to this day carry one. My daughter has one. When I worked as a special needs assistant in the school district, I used to make them for my students. And so, any way that I can get more things out for people, I'm going to try to do it.
I love that idea. That's really great. I think what you got here, and the other piece that I like that I seen was the women's reproductive rights earring. I love that one. That is so cool.
Yeah, there's a couple of them. So I have RBG and different things. And these ones actually sell out pretty fast during my craft fairs.
Yeah, I could see that.
I could see that too. And you go on here and like you said, you have all these stellar ratings, and people have made some really nice comments about what they received, what they purchased, and what they received. So that's fantastic.
Thank you.
So Etsy has been a really great thing for your art life.
Yeah, so it's been pretty steady sales, I'm not a millionaire off of this or anything, but I at least get sales every month. So that is one thing that helps. And I never get charged extra fees by Etsy because I have enough sales that it just comes out of the sales that I'm getting. So that part has been very beneficial. And it's also been helping me fund buying supplies for the craft fairs that I do. And those craft fairs that I've been doing, so I recently started doing those in September of last year, was my first one. And I was actually shocked. I was doing a fair for, it was for Flight. It's held by CS Rotary Club of Colorado Springs. And this art event helps fund District 11 school districts and different art programs. And I ended up doing a butterfly for them, and they allowed artists to come in and sell their stuff during this event. So I had a bunch of my little trinket, fine craft items, and then some artwork. And I was actually pretty shocked because, this is people who are coming and they're only buying, my stuff is so reasonably priced. You hardly ever find something over $20. Even my ornaments are pretty cheap. And people are buying these $10 earrings, and I made $400 in one night.
Nice.
So, kind of give and take. I know that there's kind of that taboo within the fine art world and the craft art world. I know you guys had that conversation with Nick Kremsey on his podcast, but what I find is that like people that I know, mainly my friends and family, most of the time they're not going to buy art from me because they're just not. One, it's the price, and two, figuring out how to put that in your home or gift that for someone. They're just not going to do that. But if you look at my fine craft stuff and these pens and now I've got sewing tools and all kinds of other things, those are things that they can give people for gifts, and they're way cost affordable. So I sell tons of this stuff. So that is what is helping fund me for my shows, because I'm making so much money in these craft fairs that now I have liquidated money to be able to buy the supplies to do my next art show. So it kind of all dominoes together.
Yeah. Feeds each other. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how many craft shows? You said you started last September. How many craft shows have you done since then?
I think I'm about to start my 7th one.
Nice.
So my goal for this year after my show is to do at least one craft fair a month.
I love it.
Yeah.
you're motivated and you're a go-getter. And I love that. I love seeing that in an artist, that, they're not afraid to just get out there and hustle. And that's the difference between successful artists and a non-successful artist, I always feel. If you're afraid to hustle, I mean, people aren't going to just come knock on your door, right? And want to buy stuff. So you got to get yourself out there. And the fact that, that it's not easy for you to always get out, and you have this anxiety and interacting with other people, I think that's daunting for a lot of people, but the fact that you do this, I think that's phenomenal.
Well, thank you so much.
I want to talk about the show that I got to experience, Reflections, and just talk a little bit about that and what the concept and idea, the theme was for that particular show last fall.
The concept of that show was it got started many years ago because I chose to have a different belief system than I was raised in. And, I grew up in a very traditionally Catholic family. And, I really started pulling away from that in my teen years. And then I met my husband and chose to go on the pagan path. And with that came a lot of backlash from family and, just different people that when they'd learned that, all of a sudden I was this horrible, evil person because I'm not a Christian in some capacity. And so this show stemmed from many years of receiving this backlash about, oh, you're an evil person and you're raising your daughter in these ways. And, what does that say about you? That means that you're going to be a bad daughter. And, we don't agree with this. You're going to hell, all this stuff. And so this show was to point out the origins of things that we do every day as a society that actually come from pagan roots. And so you have a lot of people who are Christians who have this stigma, and our society in general, as much as we are changing and evolving and people are straying away from mainstream religions and becoming more in a spiritual way, there is still a lot of taboo around witchcraft and paganism and different things because of the whole satanic panic and the Salem witch trials and everything. All of that has influenced what we think about people who practice witchcraft. I wanted to point it out very blatantly about these are things that you do every day that technically you're practicing a form of witchcraft. Or you're doing a spell right now and you didn't even know. So that was kind of the premise of that, without being like very forward or aggressive with it. I just wanted to show the one that you have up now with the birthday cake, and how it is the most simplistic, basic principle of witchcraft and a ritual. And people do it every day of every year. It's a very regular thing, but people don't realize that that's a ritual and that it's witchcraft that they're doing. But yet I'm the evil person because I'm just open about it, So it was kind of an education thing. How can I show this and start a conversation with people and hopefully keep that open mind?
And it definitely was educational, because I didn't realize that some of these, traditions that we hold near and dear, like you said, were actually, based in paganism.
Yeah.
I loved walking around the gallery and seeing all these different pieces and then reading about them, or having you discuss, the thought behind them.
Yeah, thanks.
Was it pretty well received? I mean, I enjoyed it. My wife enjoyed it.
Not really, actually, because I had the installation pieces, which had the two altars, one Catholic, one pagan, to show where these Catholic and Christian altars come from. What I found was that people would walk into the back of the gallery, and I set it up so that they would come from the front end and see the Catholic altar first. But for some reason, for that show, everybody came through the backside, and as soon as they'd see the pagan altar, they were running swiftly walking out of the back of the gallery. And if I'd start walking towards them to have a conversation, it was like they were walking faster to get out of the gallery. So it was interesting to me that more people were willing to talk about my mental health piece and how I talked about suicide in that show. People were more willing to talk to me about that than they were to talk to me about religion and witchcraft.
Yeah, that's interesting. So why do you think they were coming in the back door in that instance instead of the front?
I don't know. The person I was showing with, Virginia, she had a big sculpture in the middle of the front end of the gallery. So maybe it was just the way people were walking in. It just flowed to go through the back or something. But gotcha. I honestly, I don't know, but I started recognizing the fact that they'd see that and take off. It was only people who were into witchcraft or knew of witchcraft or were spiritual in some sort of way, or even people who would set up Dia de los Muertos altars. They would be more apt to talking with me about it. So that show didn't get nearly as much traction as these other shows that I'm doing or are about to do. That one, it was just like everybody's like, no, this is too taboo for me. Let me get out of here.
Right. Yeah, it's funny how people react to that. I don't, but it's just the weirdness that we live in, right?
Right.
How did you feel about it personally?
I felt proud because it was my way of like standing up for myself, especially with my family. For so long I just took the punches and the backlash, and I just didn't want to get into all these fighting about our beliefs and why I chose to pull away from my traditional upbringing. And so for me, it was like a very proud moment. One, I tried to do something that was very different from my first show. I also did not have written descriptions for every piece this time. And I was told that, maybe you should try to work larger. So I really challenged myself to work larger and to try to keep it in one medium. So my first show, I did 3 different types of mediums, where for this one, I tried to stick the same concept over and over again, the same medium, which is hard for me. That's why I like doing so many mediums, is because then I don't get artist block. I can, if I'm tired of this, I can work on something else and get re-inspired and not have to worry about coming out of that artist block. So this one was harder for me. And then I was trying to experiment with that whole layering effect on one piece, having 2 pieces on top of each other, basically. So that was a whole nother challenge. So once I got it put up and it came to fruition, I just felt so proud of myself for being vulnerable, for letting people judge me, in that capacity, because let's be real, people still have judgments about witches, witchcraft, paganism. You say any of those things, and a lot of people immediately are thinking of satanic panic and sacrifices and all this craziness. And so, doing that and being open about it leaves you open for that type of judgment. It was just a proud moment for me to say, this is my authentic self. This is what I want to talk about. This is what I'm using my voice as an artist for. Take it or leave it.
I admire that strength to put yourself out there, to be that vulnerable, and to stick to your guns, just do it no matter what and not care. And then, look at it as just part of your evolution as an artist. And I commend you for doing that.
Thank you.
And I think
it wasn't easy, but
right. And I think it's fine to, go with other people's suggestions of what you should do and what you should do. Go bigger, do one thing. It's fine to listen to, but I think, always sticking to what's authentic to you is always important. And if you find more comfort in working on different mediums at the same time, I think that's okay. And the fact that I think, like Todd said, there's a level of courage to just be yourself. And I think you should never shy away from that. Because, we talk about this all the time. People can tell when things are authentic and when they're not. When people are going against their own self, they can always tell. When it always resonates stronger if they're being authentic to themselves, I think.
Right.
So.
And you definitely have that thing. The work is honest, and that's how you know quality work when you feel that honesty come through.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
and
you.
and I admire that exploration to like, I have this idea and I'm just going to follow through with it. And I think, again, it's a very admirable. We've talked a lot about that with artists. Well, the last artist that we just had on, Edward Mapplethorpe, just exploring these ideas, getting an idea in your head and just following through. Because it's so
Right.
easy to like get the idea and then go, oh, I don't know, be on the fence about it, or just kind of, let it kind of slowly fall away and never do anything with it. So
Right.
I admire that in artists when they're willing to, go out on a limb and just explore a particular subject.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I did for this show is, you know what? This is what I want to do. And it might not be a normal thing within the art community to do this show that I'm doing right now, but it's important for me to talk about the things that I feel strongly about and not jump on the art bandwagon. What
Right.
is the trend right now? And so, from my last show to this show, I've really learned to stand fast to that. And, just because it's not what's trending right now doesn't mean it won't be a good show or the art won't be as meaningful as what's trending. So, I have decided to steadfast on just doing what I want to do, what speaks to me, what I want to say. And, people can receive it however they want to receive it, but I'm going to do it regardless.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's what I love about you, Georgia. So let's talk about this show. And, again, it's an idea. There is no normal. Like I've seen so many conceptual ideas, and some of them I'm like, or they don't resonate. And some of them like, wow, it felt like somebody just slapped me upside the head. That was such a great concept. So let's talk about this show that you're doing, this collaboration with your daughter.
So for this show, Coloring Outside the Lines, the reason why I say this is not kind of a normal show is because it's not a concept that you see within a gallery space. Personally, I've never seen it ever. With the fact that autism awareness is coming up. Well, I call it autism acceptance because we're already aware of autism. Like everybody knows it's a thing. What we are struggling with now as a community, as a society, is truly accepting people who are different and accepting that somebody has or is autistic and how to include them in with society. Because, we have a lot of movements going around right now and that are being talked about and that artists are doing art about, such as, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, murdered and missing Indigenous women, people, and Two-Spirit, that, there are some sort of attention being brought to it. And, artists are doing art to advocate for those. What you don't see very often is art that pertains to people with different abilities or diagnoses. And you don't see as much art by people with these type of diagnoses in a gallery setting. It's very rare and kind of in between, which is why I wanted to do this. So this show is 100% collaboration with my 5-year-old daughter who is autistic. And it took couple years to get that diagnosis because girls have different symptoms than boys do. And these autistic traits that are determined, the diagnosis, have stemmed from a very sexist origin. So it used to be called the boys' disease because they believed only boys got autism or got. So as time has gone on and research has happened, there is progression that has happened. And we're seeing that girls have been misdiagnosed, or even people of color have been misdiagnosed and given different diagnoses. So for girls, a lot of times it's borderline personality disorder. And then in adulthood, they find out, oh, actually, you're autistic. It is a little bit harder for people of color and girls to get these diagnoses because you have to kind of jump through a lot of hoops to get it. And let's be honest, insurances don't like to pay for treatments, to get the diagnosis, because you have to go through all these appointments and testing and different things. It's hard. But within, knowing over the years that she was more than likely going to be diagnosed as autistic, I started immediately doing research, not just medical research, but finding actually autistic adults and looking at autistic allies and advocates and reading and listening to all the things that they had to say, reading books about, that come from people who are actually autistic, and following that autistic movement where, they're speaking out about their experiences as a child or how they want to be treated. And now with technology evolving, there are new ways that some nonverbal autistics are now being able to find ways to communicate with society as a whole, or even their parents for the first time. And so there is this huge enlightening that's happening where if you actually listen to these autistic people, they're telling you a wealth of knowledge, but so many people are, they don't listen to their actual voice, and they talk over them and they say, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about, even though that person is actually autistic. They're telling you from their own experiences. So there's been this great big debate and arguments going from the medical side and the people who have loved ones that side with the medical side, and then the actually autistic movement and autistic allies who are saying we need to listen to autistic voices, and we can make changes based on what they're saying to better their lives and help give them independence and give them a more meaningful life. Because let's be honest, as horrible as this is, we as a society treat people with diagnoses and disabilities as less than. Their civil liberties are trampled so often and so blatantly in front of people that people don't even bat an eye. They don't even realize it's happening, and it's happening right in front of them. So for this show, after doing all of that and listening to all of this, I joined an autism parent support group, that the hospital put me into right away when she got her diagnoses. And the one thing that I started noticing was this gloom and doom narrative. How horrible, how hard, how complicated, oh, I just wish we could find a cure. All of these things that basically say that they're not really okay with their kids or their loved one being autistic, or that their life is over. It is so heartbreaking to me, and it brings me to tears to know that there are people in this world that don't value each other, because really their brains are wired differently. And how boring would it be if as a society everybody thought the same, everybody did the same things, everybody's way to solve problems was all the same? We'd never have anything new and innovative going on. What I wanted to do was bring out that positive. You can talk to anybody any day of the week, any parent, anybody about autism, and they will tell you all about the hardships and the negative side and what they're struggling with right now. They'll talk about it all day long if you let them. But how often do you hear them talk about the gold nuggets, the positive aspects, the part that we should be celebrating for them being neurodiverse and for them thinking a different way and bringing a different solutions, different ways of thinking, diversity into our world? And that we need that as a society. As much as people say, oh, well, we're starting to be inclusive, we're really not. Inclusivity is more than just breathing the same air. It's are you providing those ADA accommodations? Are you when you see that kid playing by themselves, is your kid saying, come play with us? Are you including that kid over there? Or because he's acting a little weird and he makes noises, but he doesn't really talk and he doesn't take social cues, you don't really want to hang out with him? So as a society, we even teach our kids to stay away from kids like that. Or when you're in public and you have a child that's stemming, don't look at them. Don't stare at them. Don't point at them. You're constantly trying to tell your kids not to do these things. But in reality, like when I'm with my daughter, I tell it's okay to ask, because that curiosity, that starts that conversation. That's the first step to getting to true inclusion, is you have to be able to have these conversations and teach your kids that not everybody is the same as you. Even if you're looking at neurotypical people, not one person is the same. And the way that we think, the way that we learn, everybody does these things differently. So why do we need to make a bigger deal about an autistic child learning differently? That was kind of my initial premise on that, is how can I make an autism acceptance show that focuses on that positivity and is truly a celebration for Autism Acceptance Month? Because we shouldn't keep talking about the hardships on a month that's supposed to be positive. You do that any other time. We talk about that another time. Right now, let's talk about the good things, the things that we're happy for, the things we're excited about. So for this show, I picked specific autistic traits or different things about my daughter that I find to be positive and that I love about her. I adamantly believe that if there was a cure for autism and we took that away, my child would be a totally different person. She would not be the same. And I love her the way that she is, and I want her to stay the way that she is. I'm trying to teach her that we can celebrate that you're autistic, and that, over time, I know society is going to tell her that, oh, well, you can't do that, or you don't belong here. You can't go and do that. But if I can find a way to bring up her confidence and her pride in herself, then it doesn't matter what they do, because at the end of the day, we know that we're setting her up for success, and we're going to try to give her that strong emotional stance that it's okay to be different, and I'm glad I'm different. And what can I do? I might have to do things a little bit differently. I might need more steps to do this. I might need a little bit of help, but I can do it. And that's what I want her to do as she gets older. A 5-year-old having an art show in a gallery, that's a good first step, but that's kind of the premise of why I'm doing this show and the concept where it came out of.
Tenant wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine, and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code. Scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm Georgia Padilla.
I'm Daemonia, and I'm listening to the Tenant Podcast.
You mentioned early in this part of the conversation that there's it sounds like there's a difference in genders as far as the symptoms for lack of a better description, or what they experience. Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
So within my research, I want to give a disclaimer. I am not diagnosed as autistic or anything, but based on listening to actually autistic adults and doing research and seeing this actually being the case for my daughter, watching her experiences, one thing that girls do is they have, girls in general have this innate instinct and need to bond. Right. We band together. Boys may, they don't mind being alone or just, doing their own thing. But girls have this innate want to belong. And that is true even with autistic girls. So they do a thing called masking, which is where they try to hide an autistic trait or symptom so that they appear to be normal and fit in. So, a lot of times girls might try to hide their stimming. You don't hear as many girls. I mean, this is not true for everybody, because when you meet one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. They're so different. The spectrum is so wide array that not one autistic person is the exact same as somebody else. But for most girls, masking may mean, not trying not to stem, which is self-stimulatory activity. So they are, like for us, it might be, shaking your foot, tapping your foot incessantly, chewing on your pencil, those kind of things. Everybody kind of does it. But for autistic people, it's more to an extreme degree. Like, it's very noticeable. What most people think of for stemming is like you can hear the auditory response, where it's just kind of like just noises up and down, sometimes high pitch, sometimes low, the hand flapping, bouncing up and down. Those are pretty common forms of stimming. So a lot of girls, they try to hide that. They will do something called scripting or dialoguing, which is where they might have memorized a show script that is similar to real world situations. And when they are in that situation, their brain goes and gets that script so they know what to say and how to act in that social situation. So they might not fully be reading these social cues, but it looks like they know how to read social cues because they got it from watching that show that told them how to react in this situation. So my daughter's really good at this, and she's able to fool a lot of people because she does do this. And some people even say, oh, she's talking so good. And, I'm like, yeah, she is. But I know that just came from a whole Barbie Dreamhouse episode. So as a parent, it's kind of like you're like an investigator. You're always trying to figure out what is the root function of that behavior. Why are they doing that? Where did that come from? What is the antecedent that started this? So you're always investigating what their behaviors are, or what you should be doing to prevent those behaviors, or, vice versa. It's kind of like a big cycle here. But so there's that. And then also a lot of girls will still have eye contact because they recognize that, oh, I'm trying to be social. This is what that person's doing. I'm going to copy that person because that person's a cool person. And if I do what they're doing, then I'll be a cool person too. And they'll want to talk to me. So it's like this mimicking thing where they're mimicking the behavior that they think is expected of them at that time. Where a lot of times that you see with boys, one of the main things that you see is that they don't have eye contact. They tend to just play by themselves, even if there's other people there, even if they're doing side play, which is like where they bring a toy or whatever they're playing with and sit next to somebody, but they won't directly play with that person. So they're just more apt to showing these symptoms that we directly correlate with autism. So girls, it's kind of like a chameleon. They kind of try to camouflage themselves. And then what happens is usually once they're in a safe place, it's like the mask comes off. And then because they're in their safe place, a lot of times they might have the behaviors, the meltdowns, the burnout, where it was so much and they held themselves together all day. But now that they're home and in their safe place, they can just let out all the craziness and re-regulate themselves because they had to hold it in all day. Where a lot of boys, you'll see it's just happening right there in real time. So that's part of that difference in gender as well. There's a couple other things, but those are like the big things that kind of trick doctors a lot of times, or even society in general, because, oh, well, you're not acting autistic, so there's a lot of misconception. And I think that's also partly because of the way Hollywood portrays autism, the way that, we see people with autism. A lot of people automatically think, oh, it's these people who are nonverbal. That's how all autistic people act. And that's not the truth. That's not the case, because every single person is so different. They all act differently. And so it's very hard to just automatically assume, oh, that person's autistic. Oh, it's hard to do that because there are a lot of, I hate the term functioning, non-functioning, severe, not severe. it's so difficult, but that's what so many people use to try to explain those differences, when really it's just this trait is more severe than this trait. And I actually have a piece in the show, or we have a piece in the show, that is Daemonia's specific autism spectrum, what her spectrum looks like.
Wow. That's so fascinating. Like you said, like you touched on, the way that it's expressed, there's so many variables, just like like we're all different. It all comes out in different ways. It's fascinating. And I think it's intriguing that, how intuitive, how intelligent it is that they're able to pick up on those nuances of behavior and incorporate it, like it's processed. And they're like, I know that this is the way these people act, and this is the way I should act in this situation. That's fascinating to me, that how it gets processed and then how it gets expressed, So I got to ask you this question. You being the mother of an autistic child, you don't see this as a disability.
No, I personally don't. I know that there are going to be other parents out there who have autistic children who are not going to agree with me, or who are going to be upset with what I have to say, because I have a very difference of opinion about my daughter and her being autistic than a lot of other parents do. There's very big debates and arguments that go on within the community. But so I used to work as a special needs assistant in the school district for quite a few years before I even got pregnant with my daughter. And when I worked with those students, I had a wide array of special needs students, from autism to Down syndrome to cerebral palsy. I mean, just tons of different diagnoses. And what I found about special needs children in general, but specifically Down syndrome children and autistic kids, is that they have this innate love, this innate pride, this innate, they would never intentionally do something to harm you. Like, they just genuinely care about people and want to make you happy and make you proud about things. And they want to feel like they are needed or valuable in some sort of way. And so as I worked in that capacity, this kind of gave me the skill set and a different way of thinking, so that by the time I had my daughter and this ended up coming up, I already kind of had a different thought process on what this was going to mean for our family than what most other parents have. To me, I saw this as, my daughter can do things. Like, I'm seeing things that these kids are doing every day, and it just amazes me that we don't give them enough credit for what they're truly able to do, especially kids who are nonverbal, because if you don't have a way to communicate with them, you don't know everything that's going on in their head, what they know, what they're capable of, because a lot of people in society treat nonverbal autistics as infants and babe, what do they call it? Infantize them. And what research has been showing is when they're able to give them a way to communicate, whether it's typing on a computer, whether it's tapping letters and you're saying the words that they're spelling out to give them a voice, whether it's the ACC, the assistive communication talker, which is usually like on an iPad or some sort, whether it's PECS, which, those are controversial too, but whether it's some form of way that they are able to give them a way to communicate, all of a sudden parents are finding out that their kids heard them talking about how hard their life is and how it's difficult to have that child. And then their child feels like a burden, or that they understood that the whole time, that they're a burden and they don't know how else to communicate, because behavior is a form of communication. They're communicating to you that they need something or that their needs aren't being met. And so yeah, it can be hard, and it's a learning curve. You don't learn these things overnight. It takes a long time and it can be stressful. But what I found is putting in that work and going through that intense period is that when your autistic child or loved one's needs are being met, they have less behaviors because their needs are being met. This is with anybody. Happy kids act happy. They don't have to act out because all of their needs are being met. And so, I get a lot of flack for my views, even coming from, some other parents, because they will use the term that, well, your child's not as severe as mine. Oh, you're so lucky your child can talk. I can appreciate that, and I can understand and have empathy for why they are feeling that way. However, I don't look at it like that because my daughter is still growing up autistic. She's still living in a society that still excludes her, that still feels like her life is less valuable than somebody else's. And my job as a parent is to learn about my child and make sure I advocate fiercely for her needs. So if that means I'm the Karen of the world when it comes to I'll be the Karen of the world. It might not be the most common thing or the most accepted thing, but I will go to bat for my child. And what I'm teaching my child is that her rights and her life matters, and that she has to learn how to also advocate for her life and her needs. And it's not going to be easy because truthfully, it's not. It's not easy. It's not easy for a quote, air quote, typical person to live in society these days. She's going to need extra tools and extra help. And I have to model for her what that's going to look like. So I don't hide when it's hard. I don't hide when I have to fight with, friends or family who don't believe in her being autistic because she doesn't meet the stereotypical behaviors of being autistic. I don't hide that from her, and I actively speak out about it. And when somebody's like, oh, well, she's not acting autistic now, my daughter can be right there and I will let somebody have it because she has to learn. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. She has to learn that this harsh reality is going to be her reality. But how can I set her up with the skills to be successful in life? And if you have that mindset as a parent, then how can you see it as a disability? You just have to give them different tools. It might take longer to teach them something. They might need more steps to do it. They might need a visual schedule everywhere that they go, but then they can be more independent. It might be more work to start out, but in the long run, it's less work later on because I'm setting my daughter up to be able to live on her own. In the medical world, they have changed the way that they diagnose autism now. So before, there was something called Asperger's and then the autism spectrum. Now, Asperger's was actually a term created by the Nazis. So if you were Asperger's, your life was more valuable because you could be of assistance to society. But if you were on this other level of autism that they didn't find your life valuable and you couldn't contribute to society, well, you were going in with the Holocaust people. So that's how they determined who had more of a worthy life. As time has progressed and the diagnosing criteria and different research has come about, they're changing that. So now what they have is 3 levels of autism. Autism spectrum disorder shows that it's a spectrum. So most people think it's linear like this, and that, this is more autistic, this is less autistic, and then you're somewhere on here. What really it is a circle. And it's kind of like a pie thing. So I actually have a piece. Maybe I should go get that. Where it's kind of like a pie chart almost. And each colored slice of the pie is a different autistic trait. And somebody might have for my daughter, emotional regulation, she might need more help. So she has more autistic traits of that. But she makes eye contact and wants to be social. So she has less of those autistic traits and needs less help with that. But she might, she has sensitive sensory sensitivities, and she is sensory seeking all the time, and she needs a sensory diet. And we have to, our house is like a sensory room. We have a swing and a slide and trampoline and weighted blanket, weighted vest, and all these different things. So she needs more help. She shows more sensory traits. So where you are on there moves, and each person has a different autism spectrum that they're on, where all of their traits are a little bit different in each area. So within these diagnoses, so autism 1 means that you need a lot of assistance and that you probably will not be able to be independent without an extreme amount of help, and that might not even be enough for you to be independent. Okay. Then autism 2 means that you might need some assistance in certain areas, and in other areas you're able to be independent with some supports in place. And so these people are people that can move out on their own, but every time that they have a severe change in their life, whether it's moving out on their own, changing grade level, going from elementary school to middle school to high school, moving out on your own, just different major life changes, they will need more assistance, and their traits will increase, and they will need more help to be able to be independent. And then there's autism 3, which means that you need little to no assistance and you're able to be independent on your own. So there's 3 different levels within that. Now, my daughter was diagnosed with autism 2. So in some areas, she does need a lot of assistance. And in other areas, she has the ability to be independent with a little bit of support.
Thank you for, that is a lot. I had no idea, I can totally visualize though the circle and all the pieces that come into play, and how you have all these different traits around the circle, right? Like how you get diagnosed, I guess, and what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, essentially, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah. And when that's a good way to put it, strengths and weaknesses. And then within finding support for those weaknesses, what do you need to bring that percentage up higher to where you can be independent? So it's kind of giving you those supports to help those weaknesses. And by all means, I don't want to say that like I'm an expert or anything, or that this was easier for me, because there was times that it was very trying. But I think the fact that I am really trying to embrace who she is without changing her or making myself go crazy that, I need a cure, and trying all of these things to just change her, I think is what has made my experience different than other parents that I know.
You're putting the work in, which is what you should do as a parent, no matter how your child is. That's part of being a parent.
Right.
And like you said, you have to advocate, especially in the scenario that you're in, because otherwise you just if you don't, nothing happens and you just kind of get pushed aside, right?
Right. And it's kind of like that whole, I hate using a racial example, but it's kind of like mixed children who they're not Black enough to fit in with this crowd, and they're not white enough to fit in with this crowd. And they're always it takes them more to prove that they belong somewhere. And I only use this as an example because this is the example my husband gave to me, because he's mixed, that it's kind of the same, where for my daughter within the autistic community, she's not autistic enough and, being verbal and everything, or for society, she's not fitting in. So it's kind of like that double-edged sword where I almost feel like I have to advocate more, because initially, you meet my child for 5 minutes, you would never know. It's, when you're actually there and spending the time with her and, experiencing her in a larger capacity, do you start seeing these differences, or her struggling with social interaction or different things like that. It takes time to see that. And if you're only seeing my child for 5 minutes, then it's the whole, oh, she's not autistic, you're just giving her a label, and all of these things. And then it's once these behaviors come out, or they see a lot, oh my gosh, how did you do that? Oh, I'm so sorry. And I really can't stand that when people tell me that, oh, my daughter's autistic. Oh, when people, I just really despise that, because it's like, that's like telling, like, they look at me like as if I have cancer or something and I'm dying, and like my world is over because I have an autistic child. And I can't stand that. It really just does something to me, that it's like, why does it have to be this horrible thing? Like, I love my daughter. She reminds me to have a positive outlook. She reminds me to look at the small things in life when I'm just overwhelmed and looking at the big picture and going crazy. And, she reminds me to do my mental health, because I'm so adamant on hers and making sure her sensory. And, I'll tell her, I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy's in the red zone. I'm so frustrated right now. I'm so angry. And do you want me to get the brush? You want me to do down, down, down? That will help you feel better. You want to do some candle breathings with me? And like, in that moment, like, I'm realizing, oh my gosh, like, I am out of control and I'm modeling this behavior. And because I modeled this for her when she was learning how to emotionally regulate, she is now helping me get back to that space. And,
she knows, right?
Yeah. And I don't know other kids who do that. I don't. I mean, my niece is the same age as my daughter. She needs assistance to help regulate herself. She's 5 years old, just like my daughter. And my daughter is able to help me emotionally regulate, because I was so intensive with her and trying to teach her how to regulate herself. Now she's trying to help other people learn how to regulate themselves.
What it really comes down to is you're providing tools that for her to cope. And I think that's the most important thing, is you're being realistic about it. It's not going to be easy. This is a cruel world. People are going to treat you poorly, but you're giving her tools to not only regulate herself, but to navigate, society. And that's the most important thing you can do, is for any kid, no matter if they're neurotypical or neurodiverse, everybody needs tools to cope, whether it's anxiety or dealing with mood swings,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that's how I tried to explain it to her. Like, like, she doesn't understand that not everybody's autistic. She thinks everybody is. And so trying to explain that to her, that just because, that I think it's wonderful, she thinks it's wonderful. Like, it's a great thing. Right. But explaining to her that other people might not be experiencing it the same way, or you might have to help teach them that it's a cool thing that you think differently, like, trying to help her understand that. And, like you said, it is a cruel world, but how much better would our world be if we all came with that understanding, and if we all taught our kids that everybody thinks differently and everybody acts differently. And, this is how we include people, which is why I love the fact that they're starting to make inclusive parks that have like swings for wheelchairs and, different things like that. That is what we need in society, because these behaviors for how adults treat each other was taught to us. We learned that behavior in some capacity. Kids, they don't think about any of that stuff unless they're told to think about that kind of stuff. And so I try to teach her that, tell people it's okay. Or, if they ask you why you're acting like that, just say, well, sorry, I didn't know that wasn't okay to say. Like, you just be honest with them.
Honesty is the best policy, always.
Yes, always.
Well, I commend you for doing the work. And I love that you have this relationship with your daughter, and you're setting her up for success, because the reality of it is that there's a good chance that you won't always be around, right? I mean, that's just, you don't know what life's going to throw at you. And like I tell my kids, I've tried to teach you to be self-sufficient, because there's going to be a day when myself and your mother are not going to be around anymore, and you got to fend for yourself.
Or they're going to be on their own somewhere else in a different community.
Yeah.
And not be able to.
And it's the same thing, the exact same thing for your daughter. She has different skill sets, but it doesn't, it's not a lesser experience, you know?
Right. Right. Well, and I try to explain it this way because, like, I think we forget about this a lot is people talk about autistic children all the time, but what people seem to forget is autistic children turn into autistic adults. It doesn't just go away because they became an adult. So, the fact that my daughter might be sensory seeking as an adult, she's probably going to stay sensory seeking. And so how is she able to manage that in a way that's healthy, that doesn't negatively impact her life? So how do we give her the skills to learn what is appropriate ways to get that sensory input? So, she just can't go up to somebody and squeeze them because she wants a big squeeze. That's, for one, stranger danger. But for two, people have personal boundaries, and you need to be asking people before you touch somebody. You can't just expect everybody's going to give you a hug and let you squeeze them till their eyeballs pop out. So how can we teach her these things that are socially appropriate, but also gives her the input that she needs to regulate her body? Because, like, for the sensory input, how it was explained to me was that, when you drink so much coffee and you don't eat anything and your body gets really fidgety and you don't know what to do with yourself, but you feel like you got to move. And if you stay sitting down, it almost feels like your body's going to like explode because you just got to move.
Yeah.
That's how her body feels all the time.
Yeah.
And so she's always looking for some sort of sensory input, whether it's spinning nonstop, swinging, jumping, humming, whatever it is, to regulate her body for not feeling like that. So the more input that she gets, the less her body feels like that, and the more attentive or in the moment she can be, because her body is not taking her away from what she's doing at that point. Because once she's too sensory stimulated, she is unable to be present in the moment. Like, you can't have receptive language access or anything. Like, she's just like not even there anymore. And so you have to find a way to get her in control of her body and make herself feel better to where she can do things. And so as an adult, how can she do that? And so I've really looked and reached out to autistic adults to find out what they've done over the time. And some of the things is the same thing. Like, they have sensory swings in their house. And, so it's just finding those outlets and then teaching her how to advocate to get those. Or if you're in a job, the fact that you might need a couple extra breaks to go out and run up and down the stairs or do whatever it is you need to do to get yourself regulated so you can go back to work. Just different things like that. And so I've been trying to do that now while she's young so that it will be integrated enough to help her as an adult, where she won't have to maybe experience some of the hardships that autistic adults are going through now within trying to be independent.
So in wrapping my head around this a little bit, I mean, she experiences the exact same thing anybody else does, but in a lot of ways, it's exaggerated to the nth degree, essentially,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And for the autistic population in general, and I hate to generalize, but is it regulated, or is medication part of the treatment?
So I think, well, with that, it really just kind of depends on the person, because a lot of times, now this is not all the time, but there is a very high percentage, I think it's like 80 to 90% of autistic people also have a combination of other diagnoses. So usually, most of the time, it's not just autism. Usually there's like a whole string of things that go along with it. So the most common is autism and ADHD. So for those areas, I know that some people do treat the ADHD. However, for us, we chose not to go that route when they added the ADHD diagnoses to her list of diagnoses, because they say that there can be chemical reactions in the brain to the normal ADHD medication that can cause people who are autistic to have more aggressive behaviors. So at the time where she got that diagnosis, she was having more aggression and a little bit more severe behaviors that we didn't feel like that was a good choice for us to try that, because we worked so hard to get those behaviors manageable that it wasn't worth us to go back to that just to treat the ADHD. It's not your turn, you gotta wait. So we have not done that, but there are other people who do. And then there are, some autistic people who also have like seizure disorders or other things like Prader-Willi syndrome, or like there's just like a whole repertoire. So it kind of depends on that person. We have not found any specific medication. There are a lot of people who do like specific diets, to help with gut health, which then also helps with lessened behaviors because your gut is more healthy. There are a lot of autistic people who also has gastrointestinal issues. So that, factors in and plays a role. So there's so many
factors, right?
Yeah, that it's hard to just say specifically for one. What most professionals and most parents choose to do for their air quote treatments is ABA therapy, applied behavior analysis. And that is a very intensive program. And most insurances don't cover it. It's usually only Medicaid, and it's very difficult to keep Medicaid because of the financial aspect of that. And you have to basically be dirt poor to get it. But most insurance companies don't pay for ABA. And so that's like thousands of dollars a week. What this air quotes again treatment is that, it's had a long line, and there's a lot of controversy about it, especially between the actually autistic movement and healthcare professionals and people who identify with the healthcare professionals. Okay, so I just want to make that disclaimer because I know anybody who is involved with autistic people, they're going to be cringing at this part. So I just want to give that disclaimer. I am fully aware of all the discrepancy and arguing and debate around this. So it actually started by the guy who invented electroshock therapy. He believed that now they say the new ABA doesn't do any of this abusive type of treatment anymore, that it has evolved and they've changed things. Basically, what it is they are trying to get to the function of the behavior. Why is this behavior happening? And then change that behavior. Okay, so they're trying to find a way to prevent the child from reacting or behaving a certain way after they figure out what the function is. I'm not the best advocate for this because I have personally refused to do ABA for my daughter. This was pushed pretty heavily when she first got her diagnosis, and I've just been flat out, no, we're not doing that. But other families do, and they feel like it is their only answer because, again, I hate this term, high functioning, low functioning, more severe, less severe, but typically people who are for ABA do use this lingo and believe that it helps more severe autistic people to behave in a more socially acceptable, typical way. Things like not fidgeting and moving around at the table. How does society expect you to act when you sit at the dinner table or when you go out to a restaurant, right? It's kind of like those things. So in the new age ABA, parents are able to, with some providers, pick and choose what it is that they're wanting to work on. The more problematic, air quote, problematic behavior that is happening in their lives and that they need assistance with. Okay. So it can be anything from going out to stores, that when they take their child out to a store with all the sensory chaos that goes with it, that their child may become aggressive when they're in the store and start beating up the parent or lashing out or having, these major meltdowns. And then, all of society staring and, oh, that person just needs to discipline their kid. And, all these judgments that you get, it might be, oh, we need help being able to go out to the store. So it's very intensive, and usually they focus on, one specific behavior at a time and figure out the function. But it is based on kind of like a reward system. So if, the whole table thing, if you want to be able to eat, then you have to be able to sit at the table without moving or making noise. Once you complete that task, you are rewarded with what you wanted. Okay, so it's kind of a reward system, and then withholding. So if you're not doing compliance, it's basically like a compliance thing. So you're not doing what I asked you to do or what I'm telling you to do, so you are not going to get this until you do what I tell you. And, I'm grossly simplifying what ABA is and what it's about, because we could talk about the like for hours, talk about this because of the great debate and everything that goes on. So I'm just grossly simplifying, putting that disclaimer out there because I don't want no nasty emails or anything. So it's very much, that's the first thing that the diagnostic team does is say, oh, you need to get an ABA person. We're going to work on those behaviors. And then you do this A, B, C, and D. And then a lot of other parents will continue to reach out for more support within that based on the behaviors that they're having at home. We kind of took it in a different way, like we did tons of OT and we did speech and, just different forms of therapy to figure out what was going on. And of course, I took an ABA course so I could learn about it first before I made the final decision if we were going to do it or not. The one thing that I do that is part of ABA is antecedent work. So this is like prepping for all the could be's before it happens so that I have a game plan. If something does happen, this is what we're going to do. So this is, now I don't want to make this sound like it's easy or simplify it because it is a lot of work. Like I do a lot of prepping for everything that we do. So I make visuals for everywhere that we go. She has a visual schedule we take. She has a visual for when we go shopping, what the expectations are, what we do that she carries around. If I know we're going someplace that is going to be noisy and she has hearing sensitivities, noise sensitivities, then I know I need to make sure I bring her headphones. If I know that we're going to be gone for a long time and she's going to have to use the restroom, well, one, you need to use it before we leave. But two, I'm going to have her headphones because she is absolutely terrified of the sound that toilets make. And she will rather refuse to use the bathroom for 18 hours than use a restroom. So, I have to have all these things set up. I need to have a change of clothes because she might really try to fight me on going to the bathroom. And as soon as we walk in the bathroom, she might have an accident because seeing the toilet just put her in a perilous amount of fear that she wasn't able to continue to hold it. So we have a sensory backpack that we take everywhere. It has her visuals in it. It has her headphones. It has, I'm going to get grief for this, but it has a harness. It has her weighted vest. It has all those sensory things that we might need if we go somewhere. So I am a big proponent of planning ahead of time. And because I have all these plans set up and backup plans, and just in case if something does happen, I got it right there. We deal with the situation and then we can get her out of there if she needs to leave. So we're set up for success, or we try to set up for success so that every time we go out is a more pleasurable experience than it used to be. And so then she's feeling confident. Wow, Mama, I did a great job this time I went to the store. Don't you think? Aren't you so proud of me? And so she feels accomplished because she was able to do something that in the past was so extremely hard for her that, that for a while there, it was difficult to go anywhere in public with her. So it's about figuring out what works for your family, what works for your specific loved one's needs and what they're going to need to be set up for success, and then doing it. We had our wedding last year, and that's a huge deal, right? Our schedule is completely changed. There's going to be super loud music. There's going to be tons of people, lots of people talking, people that you don't even know or haven't met yet that are going to be talking to you. They're asking you questions that you've never had asked you before, so you don't know what to say, because she's very scripted. So if it's a familiar question, she knows what to say. If you're asking her something she doesn't know, she'll just go into a dialogue or a script, or, clam up because she don't know what you're talking about. Preparing her for that, I mean, it went for months. We constantly talked about the wedding and that things were going to be different. Our schedule's going to be different. This is what we're going to be doing. Then as we got closer to the wedding, I had a social story that I created, and we read it every single day. I had pictures on there about, this is your point person. After you walk down the, because she was our flower girl. So after you walk down the aisle, this is the person you go to. If it's going to be too loud, here's your headphones. She wore the headphones the whole time, but she was able to deal with the loud noises. So because we spent all, this is what I'm talking about. It is a lot of work, and this is overwhelming for a lot of parents. They, to know that you have to spend 8 hours a day making visuals and buying laminate supplies and getting a printer and creating all these things, and then having a subscription to these, programs that give you the visuals, and or making your own visual. I mean, it takes a lot of time and a lot of work to do this, and a lot of parents get too overwhelmed to do it, and it can be a lot, and some therapists are amazing. They help you create these visuals so you're not spending all this time doing it. But, there's not all the time we're with a therapist, and since we didn't do ABA, it falls on me to do these things. So, we have a binder of pictures and, sheets with Velcro, and we put on, we're going to be gone all day, we put on a picture of everything that we're doing that day, so she knows what to expect. And then, if it's something that she really did not want to do, having a reward system, like, I know you don't want to do this, but sometimes in life we have to do things that we don't want to do. Daddy does things he doesn't want to do. I do things I don't want to do, but we have to do them. So if you can do this for this amount of time, or I'll set a timer for you, or if you can earn 5 stars, then afterwards you get a prize for being able to do it, and then we will go. So, it's validating what her needs are, giving her what her needs are, being able to go out and do it. Our needs are being met, but also validating the part that she needs this, right? Does it draw attention every time we go out and she has headphones on, or her weighted vest, or a harness on? Because I'm not going to the Renaissance Festival for her to just flee and take off because she has no safety awareness. And if you call her name, she's not going to stop, so doing all of these things and setting up very clear expectations, because what happens is that, most kids, they know, oh, this is like a special event, I can get away with acting this way, right? But then you go back to normal and they know that this is the clear, regular expectations. My daughter doesn't have that. So if you one time tell her she's allowed to behave this way in a restaurant or in the store, that's forever how she's allowed to act in the store or wherever we're at. So it has to be very clear, concise. These are the expectations. This is the expectation every time we go out. I don't care if that kid is doing this and that and running through the store. You're not allowed to do that, because that's not how we behave inside. Very clear every single time. We do not stray away from those expectations. And even when we're on our way to the store, I tell her, how are we going to behave in the store? What is appropriate? What are we going to do first? And it's like narrating our life every day, everything that we do. So that is one thing that's ABA that I do is that antecedent work. I can infer when we're going to be in a situation that may cause her to have behaviors, and what am I going to do when that happens? What's my game plan, and how can I give her what she needs before that happens?
That's a lot.
That is a lot. That's a lot. So what was your approach to the show? How are you incorporating your daughter into the show that you're putting together?
So this one was a little bit harder for us to do. What made it end up working out is that because I am an artist by nature my whole life, I started doing artwork with her when she was a baby, before we even knew she was going to be autistic or anything like that. I would just do like baby crafts with her, and that's how we kind of spent time together. And as things progressed, what we found with her inability to generalize is that what she does special time with me is different than what she does special time with her dad or with her grandma or at school. It's different. And so what we started doing is like our art time where we do crafts together is our time to bond. So this is our journey to a meaningful connection. So like most people or most parents, this is the one thing I hear all the time is that I'm having a hard time connecting with my child. We don't have the same interests. We don't like to do the same things. They talk about things that I don't care about, and they don't enjoy the things I enjoy. So for us, it was finding, okay, we've been doing this for a long time, and let's make this our way of bonding together. So that was the initial part. The second part was as she started showing me like some artistic abilities where she wanted to draw. Every time I had my book out that I plan my shows in and I'm drawing things, she would get out a notebook of some sort and hey, I'm drawing with you. Look what I'm drawing. And she would start drawing. And so I started watching kind of the things that she was drawing in her own sketchbooks. And I decided that because last year I wanted to do this show, but it was after April and it meant something to me to want to do it during Autism Acceptance Month. So I decided to use one of the Next Gallery community shows as a test off point to see how could we do this. And so there was a show called Collaboration where you were supposed to collaborate with another artist on a piece of work or do your own work that was in a collaborative nature towards that other artist. So I decided that I was going to do one piece with my daughter. So we first started with puzzle pieces, which I know this is a very controversial thing too, the symbol for autism. So we use puzzle pieces just because it's the most commonly known symbol for autism. So we took some old puzzles that she had and some of them were torn up. And so we took apart those puzzles, took off the like picture. I was like, let's paint these white. So I got gesso and I taped them down to wax paper and we just painted them all with the gesso together. And she seemed to really have a fun time with that. So then, you know, I got a board and I was like, okay, I'm going to put this gesso on the board and we're going to paint the whole board white. We don't want to see any more brown. So help me paint this. And so I found that once I started giving her kind of clear directions of what we were doing, and I had to kind of explain it to her and show her artwork and show her my artwork. And I'd say, this is what we're doing. Or sometimes I'd even have to do it like on a scrap sheet of paper and say, this is what I'm doing. And I'd, you know, do the brush stroke or whatever. And then I'd have her copy me. So then we did the board and then glued the puzzle pieces on the background so that it would add more interest because I knew the artwork that I do is at a different level than what a 5-year-old can do, right? So how do I amp up her artwork to make it still gallery quality work, even though it's going to have to be simple? Because I'm definitely not an abstract artist and I definitely have respect for them doing it, but I could never do that, right? I like imagery. So how can I do a good gallery level image with a 5-year-old? After we got all the pieces glued on there, you know, we just did layer by layer. So, okay, this layer is going to be the green layer and we just paint it all together. Then when we got to the more complicated thing, so I actually have a video of this first piece on my Instagram of how we did it step by step. So you might want to check that out later on. But what I did was for the complicated things, I got a spare sheet of paper and I got out the paints and everything. And I said, okay, this is how you finger paint flowers. And I just did it over and over. And I put this in the video and everything, but just did it over and over and over again until she was able to do it herself. And then once she did that, you know, I gave her so much praise. Oh my gosh, you did it. That was so hard, but you did a great job, you know, to keep her interested in it. Because when something is really hard for her, she wants to give up. It's, you know, I'm done with this. This is difficult.
That's everybody.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So teaching her that perseverance, right? And then, you know, because we do the reward system, there would have to be times where I'd have to stop and give her like food because she wanted a piece of food, or, you know, after that layer, okay, now you get to watch an episode of your show. And when that episode's over, we're going to come back and do the next stage. So it was really having to work with her and her needs and recognize, okay, when is this too much? So for that first piece, it was one layer I did, one layer she did, one layer I did, one layer she did, until we got to the finished piece. And most people have even said that doesn't look like a 5-year-old worked on that piece of art. So definitely check out that video, because it will definitely show you she did it. So once I got that piece done and put it in the collaboration show, you know, I got a lot of talk about it. And I was like, okay, I think we can do this show. It might take a while. It might be kind of hard sometimes, but I think we can do it. So I used that as my jump off point for how I was going to do it. So for certain parts of the pieces, I would go through her sketchbook and say, I want you to draw this again, but on this big paper or on this piece of art. You know, she would clarify what I wanted from her, and then she'd do it. And then she'd say, okay, did I do a great job? Yeah, I did a great job. And she'd be so excited. And then I say, okay, now it's mommy's turn. And I'd add some stuff to it. And then we'd go back to, okay, now this is what we're going to do. And, you know, there's one piece in the show where she had to draw grass on, like, I want to say, what is it? An 18 width by like maybe 4 inches. And so this whole section, she had to do all the grass on it. So I taught her to like get the paintbrush real thin, and then to just like do the little line thing. So, you know, we have a paper where it's like a whole paper of her just doing it. And by the end, she was so frustrated, so frustrated. She wanted to be done with that piece, but she did it. Some parts of the pieces may be a little rudimentary, you know, like we're not doing some like crazy new technique, you know, inventing something new for this artwork. It is very, you know, your basic cut and dry acrylic work. But I think the innovative part is being able to get a 5-year-old autistic child to do the work. And what the show really means is where I find the innovation. And so, you know, I'm not, you know, an Adrian Stein in that area or anything where everybody's going to be talking about the artwork. But, you know, just the simple fact that she's able to do this and we're doing it together, I think is where the magic happened.
So how many pieces do you have in the show?
So we're going to have 10 pieces, an installation piece, and then I am actually going to include a time-lapse video of every part that she did.
Nice.
So that way people can actually see like her doing it, her being in the process. You know, there's sometimes she has her vest on. There's sometimes that she has her headphones on. So just that way people can see that, you know, she did do the work. It wasn't just me. And also be proud with her, so that it also gives her something to talk about, because she's going to attend for short periods of time throughout the show. And so if people want to talk with her, it gives her a context and the ability to tell people what she was doing. And that way it can be a more positive experience. Since she does have a harder time answering unfamiliar questions and things like that, this gives her a little bit more control on what she's able to talk about in a positive experience.
Yeah. And when's the show open, and how long does it run?
So it opens March 31st, and it will be open that night from 6 to 10 p.m. And then it runs until April 16th. And it's only open on the weekends. But if you message me or DM me for a private appointment, I am more than happy to go on weekdays or whatever to open privately for you. Just got to reach out to me and we can make that happen.
Yeah, that's great. That's an amazing. I'm glad you did this project. I think it's so interesting, the collaboration piece, and, you know, and then highlighting this whole autism awareness and acceptance thing, I think is so important. So kudos for doing this. I think this is great.
Thank you. And, you know, I wish that you could be here to see it in person, but, you know, I'll definitely be posting lots of pictures and videos. And, you know, I think what's important for people to see is that if we give autistic or anybody with a diagnosis the chance to do something we wouldn't originally think that they could do. They may surprise us with what their abilities actually are and what they're capable of, and give us something new, and what I'm really hoping is that, if I get more families of autistic people to come to these shows, that can I help them look at their children in a different light? Can I help society see autistic people in a different light, that they are capable, and we have to give them these chances to rise to the occasion, because really that's what they want. They want to be just like everybody else. And with us infantizing them and not giving them that chance, we're taking away what the possibilities could be. That's really what my goal is to say, look, my child can do it. Your child could probably do it. Give them a chance. I am 100% fully aware that most families who have an autistic loved one are not coming to galleries. Okay. They're not bringing their kids to these events. And there are certain places that they don't feel comfortable bringing their kids because they feel like they're going to be judged, or people aren't going to understand what's happening, or that people are going to stare at them or give them looks if their child has a meltdown in the middle of the gallery, or worried that they might break something or whatnot. So my hope is also to bring in a different group of people to the gallery who might not have this experience otherwise. I'm also doing a sensory making event on April 2nd because that is World Autism Day. And so I am doing this event where, you can make a sensory bottle. There's 3 choices. I'm going to have visual directions for kids to help them with independence. That way it is a place where they are included. It's an activity that it's free to go to. So it's an activity that, parents don't have to worry about paying for. It's something that they can take home with them. They're going to always remember that. And, if the parents want to take home another direction sheet and do something in their own time with each other, then that's something that they can do. But my hope is to bring people who normally would say, oh, we don't belong there, because you do. We want you to come. Everybody deserves to experience art. And, this is a free event, and it's somebody from their community who is doing it. And we want them to feel included. We want them to feel wanted, and we want them to feel celebrated, that we see you for who you are, and we're happy you're here.
Yeah. No, that's incredible. That's good.
Yeah. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing this show. I love that you're doing this event where families can bring their children and participate. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Daemonia and have her talk with us for just a moment if she's up for it.
Okay. Can you say hello?
Hello.
Hello. Hi. How are you, Daemonia?
I'm good.
It's nice to see you. Are you excited for this art show that you're doing with your mom?
Mm-hmm.
She's been inviting a lot of people.
Yeah, and we're doing a statue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she said we're going to make a statue. So that's the one thing she's really excited about, is we're doing a life-size statue of her as part of the installation.
Oh, wow. That'll be fun.
That sounds exciting. Now,
yep, and I'm so excited. My favorite piece is the hand one.
Oh, well, we can't wait to see that. That'll be awesome.
The piece she's talking about is our stemming piece, because we look at stemming as a positive thing. It's showing emotion, usually their excitement to do something. So we use the stereotypical hand flapping as what we are using in the imagery, and we did something very different. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys think of this piece, but it is traced out of her hands, so they are her hands in there, but she usually does a little bit different form of stemming. But we wanted to kind of do the main one that most people. Oh, you want to show them?
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys want a little sneak peek?
Sure.
Yeah, let's take a sneak peek.
Okay. All right, okay, bring it over.
A teeny tiny will have a peak.
So this is the base of the piece.
And this is the hand part of it. They be on it.
So this piece So for this piece is going to come out of the base piece and move kind of like flapping hands.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so the base piece.
Yep,
so
we put it on like this.
Oh, hold on, Daemonia. This is many, many layers of paint that she helped me do. And this one obviously has the puzzle pieces. But we also have infinity symbols that are also included in some of the other works to represent the actually autistic movement and the symbol that they want, which is the gold infinity symbol. So I don't know if you can kind of see, but there are little mini drawings that she did of different emotions in the background of this. And then this one has kind of the Zentangles to give more interest to the simplicity of the work. So when I actually post this picture online and when you see it in person, you'll see different layers of different things that she drew in the background. And then we will attach these onto the work so that they will move.
Neat.
And then what you'll see is the colors that are repeated throughout the show are rainbow and gold. Rainbow stands for all neurodiversity, and gold is the color that the actually autistic community have associated with autism, because gold is a valuable resource commodity that is wanted. They want to be wanted. Whereas blue, the whole light it up blue movement, blue stems from them believing that is only a male disorder. So the actual autistic community tries to steer people away from doing that. And so you'll see those, and then you'll see the puzzle pieces integrated and the infinity symbols for the two different symbols to symbolize autism. Okay, now it's your turn to talk. Okay, now they're going to ask you a couple more questions.
So when I come to your show, will I have the opportunity to meet you in person, Daemonia?
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to that.
Yeah, because Mama and me have to be there.
That's very important as an artist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So are we going on opening night? Will you be there?
Yes.
Yes. She'll be there she'll be going home between 7:30 and 8-ish.
That'll be great. That'll be great for people to come and actually interact with her and see her art and your art. That's cool.
Yeah, look at our art.
Oh, well, they're going to come to the show and see it.
Mm-hmm. We have a good art.
Yeah.
I can tell in the little preview that I got, I'm ultra excited about it. I'm going to put it on my calendar and I will definitely be there. Now, I got to ask you, when I show up, can I get a hug?
Yeah.
And will I be able to get a personal tour of the exhibit from you?
Yes.
Excellent. It's a deal. I'll give you a virtual pinky promise. How's that sound?
Pinky promise.
All right.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you, ladies, so very much. I appreciate your time. Georgia, I'm over the moon to see this exhibit and to see the work that you guys have done and all the time that you spent putting the effort into it.
Well, thank you so much. I am honored that this show has gotten the feedback that it has from a multitude of people, including you guys, that you would want to interview me about this show and get the word out. So thank you again so much for giving me this honor to have this discussion and help me pivot the change of what we talk about during Autism Acceptance Month. We can't wait to see you. And hopefully, Wes, the next time we will get to see you.
Yeah, I would love to. Definitely would love to come down and see it. If I can, I'll definitely try to come down. I thank you for.
I'll show you what they look like.
The invitations.
Oh, nice.
She's all about giving them to everybody when we're out and about.
Yeah. But I want to say thank you for taking the time to talk about autism and share your experience and your personal experience growing up and everything that you've gone through and how you're coping and the coping skills. So thank you so much. Show us your invitations.
They look like this.
Nice. Oh, that's a good one. I like that one. I have that one up on my screen right now. That's a beautiful piece. I love that one.
That's fantastic.
We're having that one in our art gallery show.
Georgia, thank you so much for the time you spent with us today. I appreciate you talking about autism and educating us and talking about all the various exhibitions that you've had at Next and the various work, the mediums that we work in. I love your work, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys at the opening and at the end of March here on the 31st.
Yes, great. Thank you so much.
Again, be sure to check out Georgia's work on her Instagram at Georgia's Custom Art and catch Georgia's and Daemonia's exhibition, Coloring Outside the Lines, a show about autism, acceptance, and celebrating neurodiversity that opens Friday, March 31st and runs through Sunday, April 16th at Next Gallery. As always, I will have all this information and more in this week's episode notes. For the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.